Great. Good evening and welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of January 30th, 2014. We apologize for the delay. Also, Paul will be here a little bit later, but we're going to get going because we have quite an agenda this evening. So we'll start with David reading us the agenda, and I know you have some amendments to it.
All right, the first thing would be a vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance, and we have a number of those. Do you want me to read those now?
Sure.
Okay. Approval of reserve fund transfer request for veterans, proclamation for retiring Glenn Robert, payment in advance of warrant for CM&D payroll corrections, payment in advance of warrant for CM&D payroll for week ending 1/30/14, and consideration of reappointment Christina Winterfeld, Town's Rep on the MWRTA board.
Yep.
6:05 we had public comment listed, and then at 6:20 Chief Richard Thompson with Massachusetts Interagency Mutual Aid Agreement discussion, and then Gino Carlucci from the Planning Board with a review of the Planning Board articles. Then at 7 o'clock review of 2015 financial model draft and selectmen budgets and financial report update FY 2014 for the first 6 months ended 12/31/13. Then at 7:20 we have selectmen budgets, transfer station, recycling, farm pond, town buildings, legal, insurance, building inspectors, veterans, town accountant. After that, look at a notice of intent to sell for 247 Washington Street, and then any reports, approval of the minutes, approval of the warrant, and set the next meeting.
Great. Do you have any amendments to the agenda?
I do. I'd like to reflect instead of Gino Carlucci, we have Chuck Yan and John Higley here for the planning board.
Very good.
Oh.
Okay, any other amendments? So I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as amended.
Great. Second? All in favor? Great.
That's a lot
go to the
easier.
races. I know. Without Paul, it's so much easier. But I'd say that without you, and you guys would say that if
Absolutely.
I wasn't here.
We would definitely say
it's
it if you were
beautiful.
here,
Yeah. We got to build a little fun here. Okay, so we have public comment if there's any here this evening. Yes, sir, Mr. Higley.
I'd just like to mention, I think the people today got, in the mail today, they got the town census. So that's important. It's remind everybody to return their census. But we did, we talked about it before, we have the general plan survey. And that's a paper copy. It can go back with the census. It can be mailed separately. It can be dropped off at town hall. But it's also available online. And the thing I really particularly want to mention is that because this census was delayed in mailing by several weeks, the census or the survey instructions say please complete the survey by the end of January.
Yeah.
So that's been extended to the end of February 28th. So
great.
the instructions to take it are in the survey, and it will be available through the end of February.
Great. And people can find it online on the town's website? Or where can we find it online?
There are instructions in the survey that's done intentionally so that it goes to the residents of Sherborn as opposed to broadcasting it out to the world.
Okay.
So the instructions are in the paper survey, which are with the census. People should have received it today or tomorrow.
But would it be helpful to have a link on the town's website? Just makes it easier
If
for
anybody
everybody.
wants it, we can do that. But
We can do that, right?
the key thing
Unless
is
you prefer not to,
the
'cause you don't want
instructions are
Okay.
in the survey.
We'll follow your lead how you want to do that. Okay. Yes, sir, Elliot.
I got my survey at 4:30 this afternoon. It was now in the town clerk's office.
So if we kept that old deadline, then Elliot would pretty much be determining the plans for the next few years.
And you can guess how I answered it. So.
But great.
The paper survey is the same as we've done in the past. It goes. The deadline is just to send it back. The online will be available through February 28th.
Gotcha. Okay. That's great. Terrific. It's a great survey. A lot of information. Hopefully a lot of people will respond to it. Terrific. Any other comments? Great. Well, we'll move along. Why don't we do the amendment items here before we get to Chief Thompson? And we might bounce you, Chief, if you've still got some time. a little bit of time till Paul gets here on that, maybe? We'll see. So we have, David, if you could help us figure out what we've got going here. We've been handed a bunch of stuff here at the
Reserve fund.
Right.
class, so we have some reserve, we have a request for a reserve fund transfer in here somewhere. Here it is.
That is basically if there's a veteran requiring funding, then you have to pay it.
Right.
You can't. It's hard to budget how many of those you'll actually have living in town in a given year.
Okay, so this thing is a reserve fund transfer to veterans benefits of $17,200. The state, is it, or the feds give us 75% back? And I'm looking, the state gives us the 75% back. You did do a reconciliation. When we get to that budget, we'll talk about that. But in any event, it looks like there's some activity there that's generating this. It's submitted by our veterans agent, Doug Brody. And there's two places to sign if in fact we approve this. It's a request for a reserve fund transfer from advisory. So they ultimately make the decision. It's just for us if we're on board with this, Mike.
Yes, so Peter, you just give me a little background and maybe the public a little background on how this all works.
So what it is they're tracking in this particular item, which is very hard to predict, depends on when an individual needs the services basically. I don't even really understand what it's all about. We'll get to that when we get to the budget.
We stalled long enough, Paul has shown up.
Oh, very good.
Excellent.
But in any event, because they're over budget, they're tracking over budget, they are running out of money to fund this, which is
So
required by
municipalities
request.
pay the veterans benefits in Massachusetts directly, is that what it is?
And then get reimbursed.
And then they get reimbursed from the state?
For 75%.
So the veterans agent, he processes their forms for eligibility and he submits the reimbursements to the state.
And
So what we're looking for is reserve fund transfer where advisory manages
Got
the
it.
reserve fund.
Yep, so move to approve this transfer.
Okay, I second. Any discussion? All in favor? Great. So Diane, I signed the green part, is that correct? Yes.
Then why did you ask?
I'm trying to keep us moving. 13014.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that's going to go back in the folder.
Okay.
Next, we have proclamation for Glenn Robert. This is an amended agenda, Paul. Those things in yellow, we've highlighted in yellow. We've added to the agenda. And I think, Mike, I had you read this last time. Paul, I'll let you read this time if you're up for it.
Sure.
Good to see you.
My apologies for being late. I was tied up in a conference call. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Town of Sherborn, a proclamation. Whereas Glenn Robert has served the Town of Sherborn since April 2, 1981. Whereas his duties over the years has included working as a skilled laborer and light engine mechanic. He has also served as the local union shop steward for CM&D, served as a member of the town's insurance advisory committee, and most important position was the town's tree warden since July 14, 2011. Whereas in his capacity as the tree warden, he has helped residents on numerous occasions, too many to mention, with his knowledge and expertise in dealing with the problems of the vast majority of trees throughout the town. Now therefore we, the Selectmen of the Town of Sherborn, on behalf of all its citizens, express our high esteem and our appreciation and commendation for his meritorious service. In witness whereof we have caused the seal of the town to be affixed to this proclamation on this 30th day of January in the year 2014, and it's signed by the, or to be signed by the three selectmen. Is there a motion to
Fantastic.
approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? All right.
All right, so
Thanks,
That's
Paul.
great.
let's
Sign away, Paul. And yeah, there's Glenn. He's behind the scenes doing stuff, keeping those roads clear. And those guys are unsung heroes. We talk about how the police are so great, but the CM&D guys do a lot for us. And this gentleman has put in a lot of service to the town. And it's,
Yeah.
helps make us
Sherborn, the
who we
tree,
are
the tree
today.
warden is on the front lines.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
Did we approve the veterans
We did.
transfer?
Paul.
We did, yep.
Good.
Okay, so that goes in the folder. Next, we have a couple of CM&D payroll warrants that were added. So let's just deal with those quickly if we could, David. Maybe
Yes.
tell us what we're looking at. I have two of them. One is for,
One is to correct hours reporting. I believe they were overtime hours that were incorrectly reported.
and that's the $9,320.87. So what we're doing, we're not paying that amount, we're just approving the corrected amount, where last time we approved $9,137 on that.
Right.
So can I just ask,
Or do I have that wrong?
The other one is the
Okay, that's
correction to
wrong.
the hours.
Okay, so the correction is $539.95. Is that what you're saying?
but my question was just to sort of understand the process that would result in an underreporting of overtime hours. Are these self-reported? Are these reported by the CMD director? How do they get to the point where we approved a payroll that had too few hours?
Oftentimes, it's either an employee that hasn't reported the hours that they were there, and the supervisor hadn't picked up or reconciled it. So it's the times I've seen it's an employee has come in but hasn't written down the hours somewhere. So they just pick them up later.
Cool, we've got some verification or some process that lets us fix that?
We have our town accountant. Anything to add to the explanation?
I understand that in this situation, the CMD worked so many hours at call, and it's called regular overtime, then it becomes time and a half, then it becomes double time. And I think it was incorrectly reported as regular overtime, and it was supposed to be double time. That's the difference making up the difference.
Oh, okay, in this situation.
Okay, so it wasn't incorrectly reported in terms of what the hours actually
No.
worked were, it was what status the hours were.
Right.
And this is snow and ice overtime as I
Yes.
see it.
Yep.
All right, so I'll take a motion to approve this warrant for $539.95.
Second.
All in favor? Great, so we'll sign this one off. Next one, while we're doing this, David, just give us a brief description of,
Can I use your pencil?
Oh, yeah,
It's on
sorry.
red, sorry.
Yeah.
Grab the pen.
this one is for the $9,320.87.
Right. As the board had requested, I've been trying to move CM&D to a biweekly payroll for some time now.
Yep.
So this is basically a payroll if we have to pay them next week, as opposed to 2 weeks from now. And I'm meeting with the union tomorrow morning, and we should be able to know more. But if things don't work out tomorrow morning, they still need to get paid their weekly.
So this
Next
is Plan B if Plan A doesn't work
Right.
out. Right, and this is a week's worth
This is
of
to
payroll.
extend the payroll one more week.
So
You're
it's a
gonna hold
contingency.
that in escrow until?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'll take a motion.
Second.
All in-
It just
any
it
other
has to
discussion?
be. I'm sorry. It has to be submitted to the bank Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
So you'll know by Tuesday, is that what you're saying?
I should know by noon tomorrow.
Gotcha, okay. Thanks, Peter.
All right. The last item we just added was reappointment of Christina Winterfeld, and I apologize, looks like some letter came to me, I don't recall seeing it, but obviously I didn't act on it.
Whatever, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. All right, that puts us back on track.
Hey, Peter,
Yes,
just a
sir.
question on that reappointment. Do we get a report at some point from that representative?
Good question. We could have her come in to meet with us like we do other appointees.
I'd just be interested to know what we're seeing with that agency, how it benefits Sherborn, what are the things that we should be asking for, or
And
whether-
citizens could take advantage of.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
There used to
idea.
be a couple of $1,000s on the cherry sheet that Sherborn would get adjusted to go to MWRTA.
That we would pay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
each year it's been dropping off, and now I think it's down to just a few $100. So Christine has been going to the meetings, trying to see what we can take for the amount that we're paying in.
Yeah.
Next year it'll probably be dropped off completely. It'll just be a zero on the cherry sheet.
Well, if I remember correctly, a few years back when they took the bridge out of my front yard and moved me to Ashland, these folks offered to take my daughter, pick her up in the morning, and drop her off in the afternoon from school. We didn't have to do that, but that was pretty cool to see that.
What is this board, what is this abbreviation?
Mass,
Metro West
Metro
Regional
West.
Transit Authority, I think.
yeah,
Okay.
They've got the white buses that, I've seen them on Route 16.
yeah. All right, I'm sorry, Chief. Thank you for
No
your
need to be sorry.
patience. We're here to follow up on the Massachusetts Interagency Mutual Aid Agreement. We had some questions last week. We needed to see look at too many darn papers. The contract that we would be asked to sign. We now have that. I reviewed it. I have no problems with it. I know there were some questions floating around and extent and any input you want to provide at this stage. I know you're here as a resource, but anything further to add?
No, I think that I presented it as best I could at the last meeting, and I'm just actually here to answer any further questions.
Yeah, I think there were two questions that came up. One was the question of termination capability on this contract, and clearly it says a 30-day termination notice. So no matter what we do, if we decide that we don't like it, we're only stuck with it for 30 more days. The other thing was the question of, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how it works. They define the question was whether an officer in another town, say Framingham, who's also a signatory to this agreement, got involved in something as an officer. The key was whether our insurance would cover him. And this talks, as I read it, an officer is defined as only an on-duty officer. So he has to be on duty to be covered,
Correct.
which is the same that Framingham asked us to send, called our officers over for mutual aid.
Correct.
We'd respond with on-duty officers. It'd be the same issue of liability for anything that might happen to them, situation they get in. And our insurance coverage, as I understand it, covers us in that situation. So if an officer wasn't on duty and got involved in something in the town of Framingham, he would be doing that, I presume, as a citizen,
Correct.
as opposed to an officer representing Sherborn.
Correct.
So as a citizen, Sherborn's not on the hook for any liability exposures that might exist.
Correct.
So that's my understanding. And,
Yeah, I mean, I think the one question was what our insurance protection is for an incident, and I had a little exchange with the chief about this, but I'm still not sure I understand the answer from an insurance standpoint. And I think he gave me some practical information, but if one of our officers were to go into Framingham and run into trouble, either an injury or has something alleged that they did wrong by a citizen over there, that drags the town, as I understand it, that drags the town into a coverage issue, either for the officer's injury or for the defense of any kind of claim.
While they're on duty.
While they're on duty.
Under
correct.
this MOU that we're discussing.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So the question I had, and I don't know if David probably has an answer to this, but if the person is on duty, are they fully covered by our insurance even for actions in another town?
Yes,
Okay.
as long as they're on duty, and that was my confusion on.
Okay, so that's a good, it's the right answer that I was looking for. And the other question I had was just out of curiosity more, which are these, is this intended to cover uniformed officers?
On duty officers.
On-duty
So-
officers, whether they're in uniform or not?
Correct.
Okay. So, because I noticed you're on duty at all times according to this.
Yeah, the reason they do that is because most agreements between chiefs and municipalities require that the chief is to be available
Always
at
on
all
duty.
times. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
that's why that was added to that.
I don't know how you sleep.
I haven't been sleeping, actually.
So,
Yeah, this, I mean, to me, this is, answers my questions.
right.
I just have to make a disclosure. Some of the discussion on the question of insurance focused on a report from Maya. And Maya is, I'm on a board that oversees Maya. And that was like one of my people sending,
Would you agree with the conclusions on it? Or are you unable to talk about it?
I'm unable to talk about it. So, by making a disclosure, because the issue here today is not the adequacy of the town's insurance coverage. The issue here today is the adequacy of a memorandum of agreement. So, by making a disclosure, I believe I can participate in connection with the approval of or disapproval of the agreement, but I cannot address any issues relating to insurance coverage because, again, I'm on a board. This is a subsidiary corporation to a board that I'm.
It seems to me if you know more about it than we do and you're comfortable with it, I'll be comfortable with it. So.
But it's not contingent upon that, so I'll take a
I'm saying
motion.
nothing.
I'll take a motion to approve this interagency mutual aid agreement as
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Okay.
Great, so I have the signature.
That didn't take too long, right?
Signature copy. Right, Chief? It was easy. It's easy to get to this point. So, I got these things with all these little doodads on them. So who signs this? David?
Can I say one thing, Mr.
I
Crusoe?
can.
Mr. Crusoe, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
I do want the board to know, and David to know, that I do appreciate the questions that are posed, and, I've never shied away from getting answers for everybody, so.
I think you do a great job of getting answers to everything.
All right.
They're sincere questions, and I think you take them seriously and give us great answers. So.
Thanks.
I'm signing it.
And you will be personally guaranteeing
No, I'm counting on you. I did it contingent upon what you didn't disclose, Paul, so. And Chief, I believe I give this to you. It needs your signature?
Yes.
Okay.
Why
didn't say I
was
Do we need to sign 2 copies?
Of course, it's a copy. You sign like a billion copies.
I'll sign 2 just to be important, you know?
That's good.
All right, I'm gonna pass, I'm gonna give you this so I don't write on it. Give you this, I'll give you this. I'll give you the folder that it all came in. Thank you so much, Tony. Nice
We're
job.
just cranking along.
Yeah, okay, good. So we're back on track here. And in fact, a little early. All right. So next we have up the planning board. And gentlemen, take your seats. John Higley, Chair of the Planning Board, thank you for coming tonight. You have you're here to tell us about the warrant articles
Warrant
that the
articles.
Planning Board's putting forth. That's terrific.
Okay, well, I think you've got a copy of our proposed warrant articles. There's 3. The first one is medical marijuana. The second one is stormwater lighting, and the third one is stormwater. So I think you've got that in front of you. I can review Article A in our handout to you. Is on medical marijuana dispensaries. Registered marijuana dispensaries is referred to as RMD in this. And I can review, it's up to you, I can review the basic parts of it.
Well, why don't you just tell us in an overview, what it's trying to do here, why
Yeah.
we're doing it, if you could.
Yep.
I know I have 2 or 3 questions, but I'll rather you
Okay.
give us the overview.
Yeah, the basic thing is we're required by law. We can't outlaw it, we cannot act. That's one option. We can just not respond, not do anything. If we don't, it means that a facility, a registered marijuana dispensary could apply to be located anywhere in town. There are some state laws, and the most important one is the state law says it can't be closer than 500 feet to a school or make sure I say this right, school or residence. So, but otherwise it could go anywhere. So one option is we don't need to do anything, in which case it could go anywhere with it, with that restriction. The other option is we can specify where it can go. And the planning board talked about this at length, about different ideas, different places. Is it a business or not? It's a non-profit, so it's a little unclear. It's a little bit vague. So our decision was the best thing is to specify the business district, treat it like a business, and so specify the location, which would be the business district. That's really the key thing. The other aspect to this in the environment is that by state law it's allowed. There's 5 of these facilities allowed in each county, and the applications are in, and Framingham, Lowell, other communities that are very, very large are the communities where there's application. There's no town is represented. No one's applied to put one of these facilities in a town anywhere near our size. So practically speaking, it's extremely unlikely we'll ever see anything like this.
Did I read or hear that they're granting the licenses tomorrow? Like
I think that
the world will know fairly soon where
I
these
think so.
all these places are going. So that would make
Well, all the
question whether you
applications,
need it.
yeah, all the applications are in. So those are known. They're listed as public information. Yeah.
A lot of towns are passing these even though they don't think they're going to get one, and I think it probably is worth considering to pass it. I had a question. You didn't, and I asked Gino this, and he didn't. I think the answer was maybe it was more of an oversight, but the distance restrictions are not in this draft, and I think it would give people some comfort to see the distance.
That's right. And we were just talking about that. The earlier draft, we named specific streets, and then when we started doing that, we said, nah, let's just say the business district. It's a lot cleaner and more precise. So in that same draft, it specified 500 feet from residence, or school, but that is the state law. So it doesn't need to be in here.
Given.
So it's okay to be out because the state law specifies.
Unless the state changes the law to 250 feet and we want it to be
Correct.
greater.
That's correct. And we also could specify 300 feet and be covered if they reduced it.
Right.
But so we can put it in. It was
I would just advise it, I think, just as a matter of good practice. And I had a couple of more wording change type comments or things that I would recommend. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring these up now or just go over them another
sure.
time.
yeah.
Sure,
There's a few other other points I might.
Yeah.
Oh, you were done, sorry.
Well.
Give a guy a microphone, and
Yeah. I got time.
Yeah. You do. So take your time.
Well, another aspect to this is defining the eligible locations, and in doing so, we said size standards. So the default, or a lot of the examples, it's the total combined facility is 30,000 square feet, and we cut that down.
That's
much
one of
smaller.
my questions. Why wouldn't you have used the same kind of size limitations in the current PUD?
Well, we came close.
You came close.
We came close.
But it almost looks like some of these, like the 7,500 square feet, that borders on the changes you wanted in the POD that the town voted down 300, 400, 500 times now.
I like your thinking. I like your perspective.
Okay.
John, a different question on that,
Yeah.
which is, it just gets to the location too. So you've located them in the business district, if these hypothetical businesses, but that would include a cultivation facility, which
The standalone cultivation facility shall not exceed 3,000.
but which presumably is not very well suited to our business district if
Right.
we're trying to attract.
Yeah, keep in mind these facilities are fully enclosed.
Right.
So,
Right, but nobody's going to be patronizing it, right? It's just going to be a fortress, basically.
that's right. Yeah, and they're fully enclosed. There's very specific in the state laws. There's very specific fencing, lighting, security.
The Odessa parking lot has all that. You could just
Some of
sell
that.
in that area.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now let's talk about that. If we did say let's specify a corner of Sherborn and try to stick it in a specific location, is it a business or not? Do we need to specify? Do we need to create a business district? It's a little unclear because it's a nonprofit. So in the end, we said, if we did have to go through creating a business district in the far corner, there was a business district out on Washington Street by the intersection of Washington and Western, thank you. That, so we could recreate something like that, or we could go through that process. In the end, we thought, in the reality of the situation, let's specify the business district. So that was our thinking. We could still do something else, but I don't think it makes sense.
I would point out that in an earlier draft I saw, it wasn't limited to the business district, and we were concerned that it could be anywhere. So
Right.
this is an improvement, I
Yeah.
think, as a result of the contribution here from the board.
Well, it's an improvement if you want to have the possibility of a dispensary in the center of Sherborn. That's
It's
guess
better
that's
than anywhere in town.
some matter of,
Yeah, I mean, it's clear we don't want it near residential area. So where else in town, it starts to narrow down, and then you start to get into the game of specifying certain streets and things like that. So that gets to be kind of messy. And as we went through that process, in trying to keep it away from from residential area, maybe more than 500 feet, but still keep it out of residential area and traffic and things like that. We wound up saying, hey, we figured out how to have business in town. Let's specify business district. That was the thinking.
Just one other point that, Michael, you raised the issue that, why do we need this if the Department of Public Health is about to issue these? That's round one. We're planning a round two, if I could put on my state hat. There's going to be a round two. So the fact that we had a moratorium helped us avoid the first round. So it's because why would anybody want to locate in
yeah,
Sherborn?
I think John raised the question of why would we need it. I understand why we would need this.
We have to protect the town for the long term, not just for the first round.
Now, maybe it's me, but the way I read this, there's a permit to build the thing, but then there's a permit for the license. And it looks like this is doing both of those, where we, from my experience, have issued alcohol licenses, restaurant licenses, stable licenses. So it seems that the license granting aspect might best be, to be consistent with that, be with the Board of Selectmen. I don't know. It looks like there's the planning board and therefore the zoning board is doing all of the above.
Yeah, in that section it says the RMD shall only be allowed to by special permit from the Sherborn Planning Board, and then again it's or ZBA with site plan review by planning board. We thought ZBA may not be able to handle it. The planning board no.
CBA does a lot of problems.
I'm only kidding. But
But I mean, you guys,
It could be either.
Planning gets involved with the building of something.
Right.
Versus the permitting, which would
The
presumably be the licensing, which would be an annual type of a thing.
yeah, and the licensing to that end, I mean, that was another point of discussion. Here, the licensing, again, we're limited in what we can do, but the licensing says that it's let's see, renewable, but it stays with the property owner, the entity that built the business.
Yeah.
And then if it changes ownership, it's got to go. We can go through this again.
Okay.
So there's a term limit, but the term is based on the ownership of the.
Now is that a state requirement? You're talking about 4.766?
Yes.
Is that a state requirement, John?
Yes.
Okay, so because that's unusual to have
Right.
basically an open-ended term on any kind of license.
That's right.
And that's a state requirement in the context of zoning too, you think? Not just licensing.
That's my understanding. I'll defer and say.
I don't know either. I'm just,
And say, Gino's not here. I can ask him, but
Yeah.
that's my
did
understanding.
this language come from MAPC or one of the sort of tried and true bylaws?
Yeah, it came from looking at several other towns, which were based on the MAPC.
So that answers one of my questions on that. And the other was just the sort of technical thing, 4771. You say a special permit shall lapse if not exercised within 1 year. And within our bylaw, typically it's a 2-year lapse, I think. So you would want to say a special permit under this provision shall lapse. just to be clear that we're not changing all the zoning
Right,
special permit lapse provisions.
under this provision.
That's all I had.
Good. I had a typo on page 4 at the top. I read it, I found it, I'll give it to you. Certified list of all parties? That's really value added there. Yes, Chief, and then Elliot.
John, if you could just go back to the comment you made about schools and homes. Did you say 500 feet from the dwelling or from the property?
I have to look that up. Chuck, do you remember? We did talk about that.
I thought it was the dwelling, but we need to look at it again.
I think it is the dwelling.
Because when you
But we should look it up because we really, the 500 feet really limits in the business district where it might go
correct.
very much.
And frankly, to Paul's point about protecting the town, we certainly don't want something like this anywhere near Pine Hill.
Right.
So it may be worth looking at whether or not that 500 feet would extend from the school zone.
I'll do that.
We can zone out the building.
We can go beyond state law. So there's no reason why we can't create
Right.
more than 500 feet from Pine Hill School and make it 1,000 feet. So depending on the answer, if the answer is from the building, 500 feet may not even reach down the hill.
So honestly, I need to defer to Gino because, or look it up because because I think when we went through this exercise, there's really only one segment on Powder House Lane where it could fit based on the 500 feet. So it must be the property basically. I really need to look it up.
Elliot, you had your...
Yeah, you're saying 500 feet from a dwelling in the business district. And I can't think of anything that would fit that. Because I can't think of anything in the business district that is more than 500 feet from a dwelling.
Yeah, it's not just a dwelling, it's actually specified a school or residence.
Yeah, well,
Not any
residence,
building.
right, residence,
Yeah.
which is, but show me where this is. I mean, you may have about 10 square feet out behind the apothecary or something,
You're getting close.
but I know these woods,
Yeah, I know.
and so,
So, John,
thank you.
thank you, Elliot. That's a very good point. So you're going to take this to town meeting, and let's say that people don't quite understand what and why we're doing it, and what we're really doing here. Obviously, you have to make that clear. But even given that you've made it clear, and it makes sense to most people, but people still say, well, it's got down the line, and I'm not going to vote for it. So now it doesn't go anywhere. So then we're depending upon keeping our fingers crossed that nothing happens, that nobody's going to try and put one in next to you at your house, and me too, and so forth. Or we'd be wide open.
Right.
That's right.
There'd be no restrictions other than what's in the state law.
Right, that's correct.
So, just so I understand. Right?
So these comments that have just been made, and I'll be certain to be clear about: is it the building itself, or is it the property line? Those are important. So that's good feedback.
Good. And the gentlemen up here don't have any worry about whether we're not granting a license for these things.
No, I think we should be granting a license.
Okay, so there's some, good.
Okay.
All right. Any other on this particular one? So then you have another one there.
Yeah. The next one is lighting, and really this we started talking about this at the planning board because we had some folks come to us concerned about a new type of barn construction that's made out of a translucent material. So when they light it up at night, put lights on at night, it glows. So the abutters were concerned that this was like a big giant nightlight.
Yep.
So on the positive side,
Trade them a Sherborn in.
on the positive side, the being on the Energy Committee, get some good news coming shortly. Hopefully next meeting, that's a teaser. On the
Are you
Energy
coming
Committee.
here? Energy Committee?
I don't know if we're going to get on your agenda or not, but I think
There's always room on the agenda
David-
for the Energy Committee.
knows what we're going to talk about. But
All right.
that's just a great teaser. I love that. But the positive side of that type of construction is that during the daylight you don't need to turn light bulbs on inside this big building, and it's, because sunlight gets through. So there's a positive side to this. But in any case, that came to the planning board. We talked about lighting and how do you control it and stuff, and we looked at, we went to something called the zoning bylaws, and we turned to page 1,
Yeah.
and there's a list of things. It says noise, vibration, concussion, odors, fumes, and so forth. But we just never put in lighting. So in the process of the very basic thing, and we should put in lighting. That's all. And allow the normal process. It's already specified, not changing anything else. It includes smoke, it includes gases. Just we should put in lighting so that if there is something that's a problem, we can deal with it the same way we do with all these other sort of environmental conditions.
Yeah, my comment as a zoning board aficionado here is that that's a very difficult standard to administer. I would much prefer that we had actual foot candle standards or some type of objective standard. This is possibly even an unconstitutional standard to say obnoxious or offensive. Well, what's obnoxious to one of us may not be obnoxious to others. We hear very frequently that very tiny amounts of light are obnoxious and offensive to some people.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a nice thing to put in the bylaw. I just don't think it really gets us anywhere, and it may create more trouble than it's worth. Is there a way to get actual performance standards, borrow those from some
We
bylaw
worked
someplace?
on it, and it got to be, there's different lighting standards for different types of light and things like that. So when you think about a tennis court or a hockey rink, a temporary hockey rink, and things like that, it gets to be difficult.
But even to say, lighting's not going to fall on any space outside the property above a certain level or enough to cast a shadow or whatever you want. Just something that somebody can look at that'll actually give you.
Our own language does specify things like direct glare.
Right, and it has hours for cutting off lights
Right,
at a certain time at night.
right.
But there is space right after the word lighting. You insert the word lighting as being one of the targeted areas, but you could say lighting in excess of X at the property line, or something like that, which would meet Michael's issue, be more specific. But in more general, I support the idea of controlling lighting, because I've had to sit here for years to listen to Elliot talk about the lighting from adjacent properties.
My driveway some night.
And it would be good to have something in the books that's pretty
Right.
objective and pretty clear, so we know where the standard is. So I agree with what Michael says, and I agree with you and going forward with an idea.
Yeah, sounds like you both have planning board experience. That's what I'm hearing. The example of a specific light bulb is like just imagine a spotlight or something, or a street light that's shining right at you versus something that's glowing. So it becomes not so easy. It's not just based on foot candles or lumens, because it's also the space, the volume that is taking up, the square footage of the light. In the case of a glowing barn, for instance, it's not very bright. It's a night light.
So in your view, would that glowing barn violate this provision?
In the case that we looked at, yes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just the intensity; it's the total number of photons.
So if I was going to build my own glowing barn, how would I know that was going to offend you? Just
Yeah.
based on this, how do I know it's injurious or obnoxious or offensive or dangerous or nuisance to the planning board until I build it and come in and somebody says, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that"?
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same with other. And I understand. This is the conundrum. It's not clear.
No,
It's not
and
easy.
you're not
And I
speaking,
also think we don't want to overregulate.
not speaking
really
as a
don't.
planning board member, nor a zoning board experienced person. but as an abutter, where every one of those items, I would argue, took place, they are difficult to measure. So
Yeah.
there's a trade-off, there's a balance, there's a degree to which one can live and a degree to which one wants to complain and how hard they want to complain. So,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's noise, how do you define that? We don't do that as
I mean,
well.
a lot of places do it very well with numerical standards and
And
measurements,
I
which
think
is,
that would be great
you
if
know,
we could do that, you know?
it's costly to enforce and it's costly
That's
to
right.
comply, but it's very objective.
Yeah, I think the more objectivity we can have on every one of those,
Yeah.
as opposed to just the lighting, I think is,
Yeah.
you know, so this opens that discussion, I think.
But just to add to that, that we on the state level are trying to make permitting simpler in the state in order to bolster economic activity. And if you've got vague standards like this, if someone's going to undertake an economic investment here
Right.
and they can't figure out what this means,
Yeah.
they're not going to make the investment. So we're much better off with clear, objective standards that someone can know in advance that they can do it or they can't do it.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad idea to address lighting in some fashion.
No, I hear you. This is,
So I think what
you're hitting all the same issues we talked about, and we decided this was the best way to do it when there's a problem. So in this case, in the specific example, the barn came to us and was described and talked about it, and in the end, they haven't built the barn. The abutters got a chance. The good news is, the abutters came and we said, I don't know, we got fencing, we've got some agricultural screening language, and that led to the discussion. And the discussion, I think, I can say at this point, it appears to me that they decided, hey, that wasn't a great location for that type of barn.
Mhm.
So in that specific example, but that's
That rationale would apply equally well to noise.
That's right.
You know, you want decibels. Standard is a subjective standard, but it's pretty high. It's got to be obnoxious. I mean, you're right, it's not a quantitative standard, but I think what you're advocating is trying to come up with objective standards for each one of those elements,
Which some places do, and they have their own problems, but yeah.
yeah.
Um,
we all agree with the idea of
oh, I like the lighting.
something is better than nothing. So adding lighting is already,
Yeah, I agree with that.
you're 90% there. You're in the red
All
zone.
right.
I think we're just saying, can you go a little further right into the end zone?
I think you should leave objectionable in there. And if anybody objects, you can have some public hearings to see what the problem is. And then the town can decide whether there is an objection that's valid. And if they still don't like it, then you can go to a court and let the court decide if it's objectionable. In the meantime, my property values are going down just so you can have your damn commercial lights and vibration shining all over hell.
Okay. How about the next one here? This one may be more challenging than it first appears.
Yeah, this is stormwater, and we have stormwater zoning bylaws that are there to protect our environment. And in Sherborn, that's
But it's definition of a floodplain.
yep.
And I don't know how that relates. I know that the floodplain definitions in the place where I do a little summer activity very much broaden the territory that was now subject to floodplain, being classified as a floodplain. And everybody therefore has to get, that has a mortgage or whatever, has to get floodplain insurance or flood insurance from the feds. And the
Right.
cost of that's going up. So I don't know if there are any of those ramifications. of
Absolutely,
what's
that's
going
what
on.
this is about. I mean, if we don't amend our existing law to identify the new maps, then we're not eligible for flood insurance. So we need to do this.
So what you're doing here has no bearing on the issue I described. That exists regardless because the flood maps are determined by.
Yeah, there's just new maps, so we just have to modify the
More
language
nice to
to
those.
reflect the new maps.
So hold on just one second, let me just add to this, that Congressman Keating consulted with, I think, the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth. They discovered that the science behind the flood maps was defective. They were using the science for the Pacific Ocean and not science related to the East Coast. Congress now, with the new budget bill, has passed a one-year stay, and the plans are supposed to be redrawn. And as part of the stay, the increase in insurance rates that are going to be part of these new maps have been put on hold. So with the plans being put on hold for a year, we may not need to adopt this for a year, and there may be new plans, at least Congressman Keating has been saying, there's going to be entirely new plans. So if we adopt these plans, we may have to go back next year and adopt other and different plans. So maybe it would be worth just checking a little further to see whether we in fact need to adopt these plans this year.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I get stuff that comes direct to me sometimes, and I got something recently that I gave you guys that was dealing with floodplain district issues. I don't know what was in it, but it's just worth you guys. Remember, Diane, I gave you that thing for you guys on some thing that I got in the mail. Just make sure we're all on the same page.
The
Yeah.
deadline had been reached for.
They're underwater.
Yeah.
Public comment.
Yeah.
So, John, there's a date here of July 7th, 2014 for the study. That's a study in anticipation?
Right.
And then you've commented that the article, or Gino's commented that per town council advice, the remainder should be a general bylaw. I asked Gino, he doesn't really have he doesn't know the reason why that's the case, and I don't know the reason why that's the case, and that's fine, except just to point out one thing, if we do go forward with this, it would be really good to have some reference to this in the zoning bylaw, because where developers look to see if they can build something is the zoning bylaw, maybe the subdivision regulations. They don't look at the general bylaws, and we don't have a good mechanism for getting general bylaws to them unless they know to go down and the town clerks and buy the general bylaws for this purpose. It'd be great to just have a reference to the general bylaw in the zoning bylaw.
We're looking for revenue. If they have to buy it, that's worth some
You
revenue.
have to buy it, that's good, yeah. So we should reference the general bylaw, then they'll go buy the,
Yeah. No, actually, just a clarification. The maps have to be specified in the zoning bylaw. So that is we're proposing the maps get specified, but we're proposing the floodway that's not specified. If there's some flooding that occurs that's not in the map, maps aren't perfect. We still want to control where a building can be built or the impact of a building. So put that in the general bylaw, because the maps are very specific, and zoning guys, I'm told, really like things to be clear and
I've heard that.
measurable.
I have heard that.
I heard it recently. But so let's appease them and be very specific in the zoning bylaw. But in the general bylaw, we still want to say you can't. If you're going to put a building here, you got to do something else to enable that absorption to occur in other parts of your property or something to that effect. So that's not specified. So that's hard. If there's flooding that's occurring, let's enable that to be dealt with. That's not specified in the zoning bylaw. So that's this extra thing that's floating. It's a
And
floating
I understand that, and I
specification.
agree with that, and all I'm saying is I think in the zoning bylaw we should reference the fact that they've got to look at the general bylaw also.
I'm sorry. So yes, in the zoning, absolutely should reference
Yeah.
the
So, I
general
mean, that's
bylaw.
all I'm saying. I think that's a simple fix.
Sorry. I take back half the jokes I was making.
That's okay. They were good jokes.
I didn't laugh.
But
Elliot? Oh, go ahead.
At some point, could we have a map that would show whose property is going to be affected by this?
Yours.
Probably. I can kind of deduce that it would affect me personally, but I'm sure it's going to affect a lot of people in town.
Yeah.
And all those citizens need to know that they are going to be affected.
Didn't they probably get a letter in the mail or something from their insurance company? No? I know people who've gotten those letters in the mail.
Well, in this particular case, in this specific, these maps are actually for the Sudbury zone,
Uh-huh.
so it actually would not affect you. The only
I'm
place it
talking
would,
about the last half.
I think these maps are just
The last half, I don't see as limited to the maps.
Hmm.
Paul, when you say the last half, what are you talking about?
There's like two different things here. This first, the location of the floodplain district, which is up there, and then there's what looks like building restrictions.
That's what we were just talking about, those building restrictions. He said, all right, so there's no floating zone.
John, didn't Gino say these were just sub-area aquifer?
Yeah.
changes?
They are, but I'm looking for.
Paul's right, it doesn't say that, 28A doesn't say that.
And in any event, there's going to be more of these federal insurance maps coming
That's
in the
right.
rest of the town. And so if this is on the books, it's going to pick up a lot across the town. And remember, following that are these huge hikes in premiums where people go from like $70 a year to $7,000 a year in insurance costs. So while it may look, technical right now, at the end of the day, it can really affect people's pocketbooks. And so I'm reluctant to whack people with huge insurance increases if we can avoid it.
I just don't think that that's what we're doing, Paul, because
Yeah, I don't.
your insurance company is going to look for that and they're going to raise your rates. Or if you try to sell your house, the buyer's going to figure that out, whether it's in our bylaw or not, if these maps take effect, these federal maps.
But these maps, as I say, Congress has now acted to put the kibosh on these maps.
But we've got to look into that. It sounds like somebody's got to do some research on that part. So, because I would agree with you, if we don't have to adopt this, we should delay it.
I know the president signed it like 2 weeks ago. So there is a federal law that suspends all these maps, and has them re-examined, re-looked at. So I'm really reluctant to go forward with this article unless we have to. So please look into it.
I will. We will. The timing on accepting these maps is not based on New England town meetings getting together once a year, and I think that was another part of the thinking to we do it now, or we miss the boat into our next town meeting, or we hold a separate town meeting.
Congress passed a 1-year moratorium,
Oh,
I'm told.
okay.
I haven't physically seen it, but Elizabeth Warren said that, and Ed Markey said that, and the president said it. So it's got to be there.
Anybody else?
Elliot Coakley said it.
All right.
I was wondering if these maps are gonna say before beavers,
Yeah.
and, because, well, I'll say no more, just say beavers. And,
Yeah.
Got it.
You've heard me say the rest.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Anything else? Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. And don't forget those surveys. All right. Next, we're going to look at
Doug Brody, so he can go off to his choir practice.
I think isn't he here for the veterans budget?
Yeah, can we do that and get him out?
absolutely. Sure. Absolutely.
He wants to go sing. That's a good thing.
All
Oh, I
right.
thought he was going to leave because he was to sing. He wants to leave early to sing. I got that backwards.
Doug, how are you?
Fine, thank you, and you?
You're a total volunteer as veterans agent, aren't you, basically? That's,
I understand that
That's
you have been over the supplemental budget
we
before.
did the reserve fund transfer, we approved that.
I
So that's
appreciate
taken
that,
place.
thank you.
Yep.
I think what we want to talk about tonight is the next year, fiscal year. budget.
And I think, Diane, you handed us, where'd she go?
Is that what this is?
She knew I
Got a
was coming up
revised
here, so
budget
she
or a
left.
pile of stuff? Yeah, okay, so we have a revised budget here, Doug.
Show me what
Okay.
I'm looking at here.
This thing right here.
This thing, see, I don't have one of those
Further in your
things.
file.
In here?
No, no, no.
House?
It's just,
Was it in the packet we got last night, or is it?
no,
handed
that
out
was just,
Okay. Tell me
Is
it's I'm
where-
getting warmer and colder here.
I don't see it.
I don't either.
Maybe you didn't get it.
No, you're the chair, you can get it, I'm not gonna get it. Just the clerk.
Just a clerk.
Maybe it's in this book, what's different than the
Begins with
Maybe
a-
she put it in
to
the
the
book.
B.
If you leave your book, maybe she put it.
I did not leave my book.
But anyway, you've upped your, what's in your book is 5,900 was in the book, and you upped it by $5,000.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
10-9,
good.
is that what you
It's
have?
10-9.
10-9.
So if somebody put it in your
There
book,
we go, I get good service.
Yeah, the
I
change,
didn't get that.
the change is, and that's really an unknown figure. We have
Right.
not carried in the past any specific amount for veterans' benefits because we haven't been in a situation in the past before I took over, before we had to pay out any particular amount for veterans' benefits. But this, as you know, as you probably pointed out, it started out back in March. We did have to assume some liabilities for one of the veterans in town he has applied for a disability with Social Security. When that occurs, that will relieve us of our liability. But as in anything dealing with the government, we just don't know how long that's going to take. And that's the reason I've asked for the supplemental amount for this year, because there may be another 3 or 4 months of supporting him. Keeping in mind that 25% of that is our responsibility, 75% is reimbursed by the state.
So we, like in the reserve fund transfer, as well as what we're budgeting here, we budget the amount that goes out. We don't reflect in the budget, we don't net in the budget the
Actual.
reimbursement that comes back through the
That's
general
right,
fund.
But the reimbursement's only 75% of
It's
the,
only
of
75%.
the benefit, it's not the other expenses.
Just the benefits.
Yeah,
That's
so it'd be
reimbursed
6,000,
75%.
up to 6,000.
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. When we buy flags and things like that, that's also reimbursed
Oh, good.
75%.
So
And
that's
do we
better.
submit for reimbursement,
Yes,
or
we
how's
do.
that work?
Yeah,
So,
through the treasurer's office, yes.
okay, so I'd ask for a reconciliation, and what we just need to do is match what we've received with whatever you gave didn't quite explain or show that we were receiving money on benefits paid out. So we just need to match that somehow, but that's
Yeah, yeah.
besides.
Yeah, I submit the budget, and Pete, I give him the necessary paperwork that he then submits to the state,
Okay,
and then the state makes a reimbursement. I don't know how much time, what the lag is on that.
yeah, that may be a lag. Looks like we're ahead, because we were showing more reimbursement than we were paying out there, so I didn't follow that.
But my 2 cents is that
This is a
we're
great
right in
point.
the midst of 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. We have veterans. We have people coming back to this town. This is the benefit that's available to veterans in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is how it works. We simply owe it to our veterans to have the money there available for them. If a veteran needs this, we need to be able to respond quickly, and take care of him and his or her and his needs. So I'm 100% in favor of making sure that our veterans agent has the tools necessary to take care of our veterans.
I'm totally with you, Paul. How do we deal with advisory on this sort of thing, David? Because it adds to the overage of their guidance. Are we going to have to make up? Because these are, this is new circumstances,
It's
not.
small numbers, even though it's
Small-
8%.
But it's still,
It's something.
It's a number.
it's an amount that adds to that you either have to make go away because advisory's
Right.
holding firm, and you met with Mary. So I'm just curious what this does for us.
I haven't plugged this one into our Board of Selectmen.
But would you
sheet,
expect that this will be one where we either make it up somewhere else, or we?
I don't think it's going to move the
Oh yeah,
digit. But
Remember that 25% is what's ultimately ends up
Understood.
with the town.
That number it's really difficult to say what it is, and as in the past, we haven't had this, but we're a small town, a fairly affluent town, and the possibility of being faced with the same sort of a situation is probably somewhat remote, but it can occur. And that's the reason I put that amount in for next year, just to cut for the coming year to cover. If we don't do that, we'll be dealing with the way we were this year,
Yeah.
with the overage. Whichever's preferable is fine with me.
Doug, does this 7925 take account of that reserve fund transfer also, or is that on top of the 79?
Excuse me?
The 7925 from 14,
Yeah.
does that include the reserve fund transfer? Is that
Yeah, that's the amount for this year.
that was appropriated?
That's just the appropriation, it doesn't include anything we did today.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you. So the actual for this year is going to
Another-
be considerably more than the
25.
7925.
That's right.
So in that sense, even though it's an increase of
It's smaller.
higher than whatever the percentage is, it's going to be a small increase compared to what was actually spent last year.
That's right. In this fiscal year.
Yeah.
That's right.
Last year we spent 9,079, and this year he's asked, for next year he's asking for 10,900.
Right, and I think he's going to spend more than 10,000 this year probably.
Yeah, it's a $25,000 nut before reflect.
That's right. The additional amount for the next 3 months or so is going to be around $6,000, roughly six, I mean, in the benefits.
Yeah.
Of which we get 75% back.
That's right.
So the net cost of $6,000 is $1,500. And it is for such a good cause. This is such small money for such a good cause.
Yeah, nobody's arguing that. I just have a question how our tall, dark, and handsome over there plans to handle it with advisory. Otherwise, that's great, Doug.
I think he was referring to me, but
Yeah, I thought he was talking about you.
It wasn't Paul, sorry. You're a good-looking guy, but let's face it, neither of us are tall. Okay. All right, Doug, sing away, baby.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for doing this again. It's,
Oh, absolutely.
so we
It's a
we
service.
approve this?
yeah, we're gonna do the budgets in total. That's what our plan is.
Thank you for bringing me in early so I can go sing.
Thanks for telling us who was on stage.
All right. So that brings us back to Ruth quickly. Yeah, we have on this agenda model and financial review of financial report update. And I see you put something in here in the file that was handed to me. Haven't looked at. Maybe give us a 5 minute.
This was on the agenda, I have no idea that that's what's on it.
Okay.
But I'm happy to talk about it.
If you could just walk us through it briefly, maybe come take the mic, take a comfy seat.
Which one of these papers are we gonna?
I think
use?
she's talking about both of these.
Okay.
The two ones we got sent in.
That neither of which have I even looked at, and they're full of a bunch of small numbers. But
Yeah, I just got handed these now.
yeah, so I'm just asking Ruth to give us the Cliff Notes version. We can look at them in more detail. And the fundamental question I have is, will you then be doing this thing that I keep asking to get updated, that I carry with me all over, everywhere I go? This monthly report we used to do, which we moved down to quarterly reports. I wanted you to update the 2013 one, so we can get it on the
It's done, I just
website.
have to give it to Jean.
Okay, I'm asking you to do that, that'd be great. And then you're gonna do one of these for the 6 months.
Right.
But what you're giving us will hopefully be useful to the extent we need to look at it to show us in some detail, not in great detail, just by salary and expenditures for each budget item, where we're at. And I guess it's year-to-date, or is it like through today on expenditures, or is this
Expenditures is through the end of December,
through the end of December? Okay,
so it's a half
so
a
it's
year.
6 months.
So
Okay.
anything that is below, the last where it says percent remaining shows what's left of the budget.
So if it's,
Anything that's below 50% could be at risk.
yeah,
Or, a lot of the cases on the expenditure line, people paid upfront for software maintenance fees, like we
Yeah,
pay them in
some
January. or
insurances and so
The
forth.
insurance is paid up front. So a lot of these budgets that show lower than 50% it's a cyclical thing that they've spent a lot of their budget up front.
All right, but if we were really trying to get into the detail or just some level of comfort for the budget items that we're looking at, to the extent there are any that are below 50%, particularly any significant ones, and as an example, one would say, because it answered my question, legal expense, which is one of ours.
Right.
We've used up 3/4 of the budget in the first 6 months.
Right.
And that's useful to know when we talk about that budget.
When you compare it to the year before, she's got that column too. At this time last year, it was 28% left. At this point this year, it's 36%.
That's right, okay, look at the wrong column.
Because we
Look at
got
the wrong column.
$20,000 more
So we've actually done.
Yeah. Our trend is good.
20,000 more appropriated this year, so of course we're better off percentage-wise.
Did we approve?
No, it's the
No,
same,
it's
same level.
Sure.
It's the same.
Yeah, 65
Well,
means.
I'm looking at
The
it.
page you're looking at is just the amount of expended.
Oh, the other one's the second budget.
Doesn't show
Okay,
you.
got it.
That's right,
Yeah, you
yeah,
got two columns that say budget, good. All right.
okay. So, but,
We are
so
looking at
we're, so nothing is other than legal, nothing's jumping out in the selectmen's or in the general government grouping.
Tax collector expenses is the same as legal for some reason.
The tax
Yeah, I
collector,
see.
with the change of
2 or 3
the
lines.
postage, she went out and bought her envelopes ahead of time.
Yeah, smart.
Police expenditures,
But they bought the
and that's the
cruiser.
cruiser, so
Right.
there's how you identify why
okay.
that's taking place. Okay.
Um,
Uh,
Cemeteries is down, they've spent most of their budget, but they have access to perpetual trust
C&D's
Funds.
tracking.
on the second page.
So CM&D's tracking, even though we have this confusion over where we're at on this thing still to be found out of the outsourced, unbudgeted outsourced mowing, right? Tall, dark, and handsome told me that, even though you're not that dark, and it's going grayer,
You're making
but he
that-
told me it was going away because he's pulling his hair out with all this stuff.
Impeded veterans expenses is another.
Yes, that's right. And that's why we took the action tonight.
6%.
Yeah,
over.
and that's why we took this action tonight.
Right, right.
So you couldn't even, without the reserve fund transfer, you still can't pay those benefits, is that correct? Or you still pay the benefits even though it's not appropriated? How, I mean,
No,
usually you
once
don't,
I hold on to the money normally until the money is approved.
which will
Advisory
take place
committee-
Wednesday night on advisory.
Right, they will do
assuming
a
they
formal
approve.
approval, they did a tentative approval last
Okay.
week.
So, but you reflect this, the overage, of the amount that's over the total amount appropriated, but you haven't dispersed the funds, is that?
The problem with this particular situation is I don't have a choice, I have to give.
You have to
so-
disperse the funds, okay.
So, you know, I
But
mean,
any
I'm
other
eager
type
to
of
make it
budget?
up, but anything else,
Like like you've done to us on legal, for example, when we run out of legal, you won't pay unless there's a reserve
that's correct.
fund transfer, or we get to the end of the year and we think around. Okay. All right. What else can you tell us that we should be looking at here in these very small numbers? And they're big numbers, but they're printed small.
The general insurance, you know, all those insurance policies are paid in July, so it's down to 3%. But there shouldn't be too many bills coming in.
Well, what about employee benefits? Because that one's a,
Benefits, I checked with Pete to see if he
that should track, right? Right,
well, he might have he makes, I'm not sure. No, the Middlesex retirement is paid up front. So
oh, that
we
would
get the
explain
big
it.
discount.
That's in there, yeah.
That's in there, so
That's-
that's why. And I also checked with Pete to make sure, and he's on track. He doesn't think that there'll be a problem.
Nothing's jumping out at him,
No.
okay. Yeah, all right. All right, that explains that. All right, good. You got revenue stuff, Ruth? Because the
Revenue.
revenues will be key to the model here, right, just to see how we're tracking. For example, where would we see, just because we've been talking about veterans, where would we see that revenue?
If you look on the first page, under state aid, and it says state veterans benefits
There it is,
for
yeah?
$140, that's what we've received so far.
So have we not received it because they don't pay timely, or we haven't submitted?
They've all been submitted. I
Reimbursement?
checked with Pete. He submits those payments request online.
Okay,
He showed me one for each month. We have received none of it.
so we gotta send the leg
It's the
breakers into
state.
the state?
Yeah, it's the state that's delaying in the
All right, because
payment
that was
process.
that's really what I was looking for in that reconciliation, understand? All right, so can you just identify and send us a note how many months or how much is
Yeah,
accounts receivable on that particular thing
Yeah.
as an example?
Yeah.
All right. Great. What other revenue stuff jumps out at you? Are we, how's our motor vehicle excise? That
motor
wouldn't kick
vehicles,
in
the
yet, would it?
bills haven't gone out yet, so that's not even in the running right now.
Yeah,
They go out next week.
Okay.
So in a month, that number will change
Will
significantly.
bump up, yeah.
Yep.
And we were aggressive on a couple of revenue projections, as I recall.
Building permits?
Yes.
Um,
And I don't know that we're,
We're ahead of the game as far as comparing to last year by about
where do I find it? Oh, total permits.
20,000.
So we had a big number there for total permits of 150 beams. We collected 92.
Right.
So do the same percentage things apply?
61.
We're more than halfway there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't lose sleep over that.
No.
All right. So again, it's the below 50% would be what you'd be concerned about?
Right.
All right.
The difference on the state aid this year is we're getting monthly payments
Yeah.
instead of quarterly. But by the end of 6 months, it's equal to the same time frame as last year.
So our rentals are not on track because we're
Yes,
Litigation
because there
on
was
that
an expectation that we
Yes.
would do more.
yeah, that would come on stream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a problem.
I understand. And then that presumably will be thought through carefully to the extent it can be in the projections for next year. Yep.
Yep.
All right. Other department revenue, you're blowing that out the door.
Yeah.
So that's area of opportunity. Looks like the Board of Health has a whole bunch of fees. Penalties. All right. Anything else that we should highlight in this quick perusal?
It says stable license is 0, but we just issued those in December.
620.
I don't see them.
620, it's line
20 on the
4450.
column.
Oh, it's in two places. It's in
Well-
4410 and 4450.
I was looking at 4410.
Oh, no,
Of
that's,
course,
I got reclassified to another line. They don't need to be in both places
All right, maybe the others
I'll take
don't
it
as
out.
well. Yeah.
with the confusion.
Yeah, see, we get confused very
I
easily.
know.
But last year we got $820 from the annual stable licenses, and this year we got 620.
That's right.
And
That's what's been
they're like
reported.
$10 each, so we've lost 20
Either
farms.
that or they haven't.
At $20 each, so we've lost 10.
It's not a stable source of revenue.
You're
Not a stable,
around.
That's good. All right, let's get out of the muck and the mire here, shall we? All right,
Okay,
good enough on that. So you'll be doing a report,
yes.
and you also did the little shorty report. So remember you did for the first quarter. You
Yes,
did the
I did.
nice little 2-page shorty report, which is helpful, but I still want that other written one,
okay,
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
because I like to make work as
I
often as
know,
I
I
can.
know.
All right, good.
This thing I
All right,
Anything
so that
else?
puts us under budgets. And I think the way we'll go is the model hasn't changed. You don't have an
No, I
updated
haven't
model from what
changed
we
the
looked
model.
at.
No, I'm waiting for David to submit the changes.
And do you envision, like, there's nothing in our book for the schools, but what you have reflects most current information for everybody else but,
Well, no, the schools is current is, which I got, through a discussion with Christine.
okay.
But I don't have any
You don't have any, we don't have any
hard
to us
copy,
here.
I don't have any.
That's all right, but you reflect in the model their most current thinking.
Yes,
And you reflect in the model all other budget makers' most current
yes,
thinking as you
what they
know it.
submitted, right.
Okay.
They're the two that, the veterans one has been,
Yeah.
is not updated on this model because the second model will reflect that.
All right, and in the model, you're gonna take a good hard look at the revenue and all that kind of stuff, right? Oh, here's my model. Because that looks like a preliminary thing. You're also gonna start maybe putting in supplementals as you see them because you didn't, it doesn't look like you really did that yet,
Well,
right?
I went over police and he cut it in half, so
All right,
I haven't had a chance to look at the others.
yeah,
It's a little
okay.
early in the game.
No, I understand. But also, you know, if I read this, you know, following what's been submitted that you've reflected here, once again, I call, in the terminology is there's a $25,000 surplus in the model
Yes.
right now.
Mhm.
Okay.
But again, that's using what for state aid?
That's level funding state aid.
Yes, but
I
we now
know,
have a commitment from the legislature that they are in fact are going to increase it by something like 40 million.
well, until I get
So-
that in writing on Sherborn line, it's easier for me to level fund than move the number up and down until, because it goes through several layers before I finally get a final number.
Right, but those numbers won't come out until May or June,
Right.
and that'll be after our town meeting. But we do have statements from both the Senate President and from Bobby DeLeo, the Speaker of the House, that they will fund level aid with a 4.9% increase. So that
That
money
is to every
is as
town?
good as in the bank.
A 4.9 increase to every town? Or is it gonna be
Yeah.
prorated or subdivided or?
Oh, it's pretty much 4.9 for everybody. It's all linear.
All right. Yeah. So I'm just getting smarter as you're talking here. So it looks like you've reflected these revenues year-to-date in the model, just so we see it as a guide. Okay, good. That's good. That's good. All right, the model is a very key tool from where I sit, certainly.
Okay,
All right, and you're sticking by as a resource for questions that might pop up in these budgets
I
here.
do have one of my budget is in here too, so.
That's right. We saved you for last.
I saw
Best
that.
for
I
last.
noticed that.
Just so that you would be here as a resource. Right? It was Diane's idea.
I know, blame me.
All right, so David, how about you and the budget maker tell us what's going on? If you want to do like an overview or however you want to do it. I know I have questions on stuff, but I'd rather listen, and I know Paul would. I've learned something last week. It's best to let folks tell us what they're doing. I think that's quite valuable.
Well, the two that will take the most discussion is the transfer station and the farm pond.
Okay.
So you have transfer station and recycling listed first. And we noted the capital item, which we've discussed before, which was instead of doing the overlay at the
Yes.
transfer station, we'd be doing a full paving project.
Yeah.
That's a very important improvement.
And we were all on board with that, if I recall.
Yeah, we had
correctly.
extensive discussion on
Yeah,
that.
so we're there on that.
Carol Rubenstein's the chair of the recycling committee.
Yep.
Maybe she should come up.
Another volunteer making it happen.
So Carol puts the initial budget together, and then we went over it. Basically, it's the issue with this is our current carrier, and the probable need to change carriers for recyclables,
Yep.
and what that is going to cost us. But we don't have the agreement in hand yet, so I don't know if Carol wants to talk a little more about that. But that's where it's about 24 grand if you wanted to put that in the budget for a worst case scenario of changing.
What's
something.
24 for? Just a higher contract cost? Is that what-
Yeah,
Right.
it's paying more for the recyclables to be taken.
They're gonna charge us a tip fee per ton to accept the recyclables, and we also will have to pay hauling. And although that contractor, it's, no, I won't say because we don't have an agreement. But that contractor offers to do the hauling, but we found that the hauler who takes our trash to Wheelabrator would haul it for less. So we're using those numbers for hauling. But even so, the company that we're currently sending our recyclables to is not charging us for hauling at all, so, and is not charging us a tipping fee, so
So why do you want to change?
Because their service is terrible, and they had contracted to pay us revenue for paper, and we have not seen any revenue since August of 2012. And they're really shaky, and
They, when the recyclables pile up at the transfer station, and it's not on the scheduled pickup, they'll call them for a pickup, and they don't come and get it. So the overflow
Everything
ends up
backs
either
up.
scattered out or it starts going in the solid waste stream. So they haven't been reliable. They've been non-responsive to my inquiries about, when are you going to pay us the amount that you owe us.
Yeah.
I tried to swap the compactors up there that they own for the amount that they owe us, and it's just, I haven't spoken to one person at the company going,
they're not good at returning phone calls, or they won't answer the phone.
So they're bad to do business with, and
Very
so doing business with a more reputable or better to do
Right.
business with
Right.
entity may be worth a premium, is what you're suggesting.
well, I would like to point out that
Convenience of it and all.
you've had a great deal when the company was doing good and wasn't, and had a market for its own recyclables.
Yes.
But when they can't
It's a
get their
very good deal.
recyclables to their market, they don't want to pile them up on their property, so they let things back up
I see.
at the site. So the company is likely not going to be around for much
So they're having-
longer. But,
Yeah.
Yes,
troubles
they
with
are
their
having
business
difficulties.
as well. Okay.
So
so
we're going to a bigger company, is that the
Yeah.
idea?
yeah, so you've had a good deal for I don't know how many years with them. So
Since 2000.
so it's it's a big jump if it turns out to be.
But
this.
you're still in negotiations with this company. And,
Yeah,
and they are anxious to do business with Sherborn. from
Right,
what I
and they
understand.
understand the position that we're in. So, even if something changes and, fall next year or whatever, we see a trend towards something, they're willing to open up and talk to us about, what we can do to change things.
Yeah, no,
It's not like we're signing a paper and not going to be working with them.
I know the company, and I know one of the principals there. I just haven't talked about Sherborn with the principal, but I just happen to know this principal.
Right.
So I think just looking on their nature of their business online so far, it's a pretty good operation.
Yeah, I think that in the long run, the best bet is to change, and they will help us run a better facility.
David, has anybody looked into, and I know it was a suggestion in one of those studies a few years ago, but combining recycling with one of the surrounding towns? I mean, Medfield's got a transfer station right down the road.
It's close by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was looked at before about a regional transfer station, but I'm sure that
I
they
mean,
exist.
I wonder if you could pay that town less to process recyclables because we defray some of their costs, but maybe there's a
Right.
way to make that work.
There would be some sort of savings. I mean, this company services Medfield, so they're coming
No.
through our area.
No, that was the other company that we got the proposal from. Medfield is doing business with the other company, not the one that we're favoring right
Oh, okay.
now.
Okay. I got
This
back
might be
with
worth
that.
looking into, David, whether there's some economies
Right.
to be had by doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So would this be dropping recyclables off at ours, and then we would truck them over to that
I
other
don't know how that
facility?
works. You tell me. I have no
Or
idea.
maybe Sherborn residents would actually have permits to go to that facility, since it's right on the border.
Yeah, it's not that far, but
Yeah. Okay.
something to look at. I mean, if there's a way we can reduce some of those costs.
Yeah. I don't know if that's been looked at in the past. A regional
One of
facility.
those studies suggested combining with Natick, which I don't think made a lot of sense to a lot of people, but
Medfield's
Yes,
our arch rival.
we did look at that a very long time
I did
ago.
Natick a long time ago, yeah.
Yes, and then a little more recently, but that was a totally different model when Natick was proposing to actually do municipal pickup in Sherborn. That was,
Right.
but, that was a non-starter, so.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting, it would be more of a drop-off situation, or somehow combining the haul routes or doing something.
Well,
Right.
the the trade-off was that Natick residents were then going to be allowed to use the Sherborn transfer station, and we could not have a flood of Natick residents using the
Right.
Sherborn transfer station. It's just not big enough.
Right, yeah, that was the shortcoming of that plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'll look at it. Yeah.
But, okay, so you're talking about closing the Sherborn transfer station and
I'm talking about
having
anything. I
us,
suggested David look into whether there's cost savings. That's all.
I mean, there are a number of things that I'm going to look into. You know, whatever way, if there are other ways that we can operate up
Yeah, I
there.
mean, we're talking about making this more expensive, and I understand the reasons why, and
Right,
it makes a lot of sense, but if there's a way to make it cheaper or not more expensive, that would be good to know.
right, right,
Even if it's, sort of expanding the horizon of things we could do.
right. I mean, it makes it cheaper if we can reduce the amount of waste that we're hauling to Wheelabrator for tipping fees. So by doing that, you'd have to increase the recycling rate to reduce the tipping fee.
Yeah, so,
So, and that program.
okay, now I remember. Medfield does not send their trash to Wheelabrator. They send their trash into Charlestown. We have a contract with Wheelabrator until I think I can't remember if it's 2017.
Yeah.
is this something to look at? You got a little lead time on this one, David.
Yeah, you got some time.
But David, you're also fiddling with some of these line items, right? To try and, what you're going to recommend, or what you're recommending, is some adjustments to what we have in this package. Is that correct?
Right. Basically,
And Carol knows about these as well. You've discussed with her some of this stuff.
yeah. We added it worked out to be $31,000 or so. Was
As
the
an
estimate for the budget, right? And that's
Yes.
what's reflected in your book.
Right.
So what I did is I made some adjustments, which included taking out.
And the adjustments you make, we're not looking at. You have them on your notes at
Right.
this stage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So the adjustments is basically taking out those increases on recycling and refuse hauling on on the budget page.
Okay.
So,
So you're keeping them flat, is what you're saying. So
well, no, I added some back in, so the net is a 24.
24. So what I'm looking at shows on the overall budget shows a $28,122 increase.
Right. So
You're going to whittle that down.
I took it down, kept it flat, and then added back 6,500 between those two lines.
So
so
it's
the
a
net difference was-
6,500 increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of 40,000 between the two lines, it was 46,500.
Is that 1.4%?
Where are you getting those numbers from, Peter?
No, I'm looking. If I'm looking at the right thing, transfer station,
okay.
not recycling.
Well, I was looking at these, but they combine transfer station and recycling, which is, I think,
Yeah.
what's throwing me off. Good.
Yeah. So what Dave just said, we're right now showing 28,000 or 10.8% increase over last year's budget, which reflects this worst case. It sounds like, worst case New Deal scenario, and some other increase you were describing. And for your modeling to try and achieve advisories overall 1.4%, some adjustments that you're making
Right.
that you are not poorly thought.
Right. Basically, it ends up being a 1% increase
Yeah,
on
equal.
transfer station.
Okay.
But as I talked to the advisory chair, there's this potential of a big
There's
big
exposure.
jump. Yeah.
There's exposure.
So we were talking different ways that we might be able to deal with that.
Okay. Because that exposure, let's say the real cost, absent changes like Mike's suggesting, or absent fees for fees for permits or pay as you throw ultimately at some time in the future. So absent any change, business as usual. If we go deep on what we're projecting now, but the real cost is something different, that's going to continue to bite us going forward. So we have to I'm not sure how we want to deal with that.
Well, we would have to look at changing something. I mean,
Something, yeah.
if you had the revenue source coming in for this, then whatever revenue is coming in would take this off the
Yeah,
sheet for.
yeah, I mean, there are some revenues here, nominal amounts, and this is the, and that's to the general fund, that's not
Right.
it's not to the general fund, it's reserved for appropriation. So, but it's not netted, it's special revenue fund, whatever it is.
In my model, it's
In the revenue line when you pull some in. Okay, got it. But the revenue is 17 grand as of, for whatever period, I don't know, fiscal 12. And that's when people dump stuff off and they pay for it.
Right.
Maybe this vendor, when they were paying their bills, was paying us something that went in
At one
there.
time, yeah, they were. They
Yeah.
were.
And that's the issue we've had in terms of tracking and making sure we're getting the money we're entitled to, and that people aren't just dropping things off and not paying for them.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at, and the operations contract is due as well, which we're
Yeah.
talking to.
Okay, so
the
you're-
current operator.
But we've talked about controls on that and things before.
Yeah.
And you're not showing really much of in the way of a contract increase which would be the operations line in this budget.
Right.
And you don't anticipate that in your discussions at this stage.
Well, it's unless we can figure something out over the next year to make it work within the means, which is,
Yeah.
that's what I would have to stay at the 1.4% for all the selectmen budgets. You can't fund something like upfront a 22 grand or a 30 grand increase. You have to do your best to whittle that down and then come back.
Right.
If that's what.
Right. So, except for if we think that that the community doesn't deserve us cheating on the budget, right? To
Right.
meet a well-crafted but yet arbitrary guideline,
Right.
we need to. I think we need to be clear on that, because we're going to have this discussion when we ultimately say yes or no on
Right.
what we're doing here.
Yeah. It
There are a
definitely.
variety of choices that you're suggesting
Right.
that don't come without risk and exposure.
Right, and judging on, it's really would be the will of whether you want it built into this budget or you want it left in another budget somewhere else
Yeah.
as a reserve in case it does end up with a worst case scenario.
Yeah, I don't know what to say on that.
Should be here. That's where we've always had it.
Keep
Better
Yeah.
accountability.
I prefer showing reality of what it's going to be. So the question is, what's your best guess of the number we're likely to achieve in a contract? It's still in negotiation, right? I mean, I think that's really where we're at.
Well, I think that's what we've already done. So that's
Yeah,
that's
so
the
that's where
30.
you're at. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned pay as we throw. I mean, how far along have we gotten in terms of exploring that, or
Just
Well, the
some-
committee's already. The committee's talked about it, and maybe Carol could talk about where
Well,
they've at.
the committee talked about it. Some members are on the fence. A few members are leaning towards it. There's a consultant available to us for free who will come and talk to community groups or the Board of Selectmen, and I think it merits a lot of discussion, and I think he lays out a very good case, and I think we should have a lot of discussion about it.
sounds like there's sort of equity advantages to doing it that way, isn't there? I mean,
Well, yeah.
people who use it the most pay the most.
You can
Right.
use.
DEP's pushing that for just that reason, because it promotes recycling. And usually you see a spike in recycling because there's an economic incentive. But for a town like Sherborn, that saving a few dollars isn't going to motivate a lot of people in town. It's not going to.
Well, the idea is to make the cost of the bags costly enough that it will make people do it.
Well,
For a long time, the committee felt that there were a lot of people in Sherborn who wouldn't care how much the bags cost. They would just pay to throw away their trash, no matter what it cost. But we think there is a per bag cost that would make people think.
well, assuming that the larger group of the community doesn't object to the concept of pay as you throw, and that would come out of discussions as we move forward on that. Where they say, geez, my taxes are so high, why should I have to pay this little Mickey Mouse fee here for these bags and in a permit sticker, that comes with some bags, let's say, or whatever. So assuming that that becomes less of an issue than some might otherwise think, and we have a good discussion about pay as you throw, I'm experienced with pay as you throw, and I will say I recycle a lot more where I have to deal with pay as you throw than I tend to do here. And I think it's great. I think it's great. So
You also have people who, presumably they throw a bag of trash away every 3 days. You have other people who throw 3 bags of trash away a day. I mean, it doesn't make sense for.
that's great.
They may pay the same in taxes or similar, but they're using very different amounts of the same service, and it's a service that we ought to be discouraging people from using as much as possible.
So would it be wise for your committee to come to a consensus for us to next have a very serious discussion about it? Seems to me.
Yes, it would.
Right?
Yeah, to move forward with something like that officially, it's the Board of Selectmen's. I mean, we got a town council opinion on that.
Hi. Yes.
Did you get to finish?
Yeah.
I have to identify myself, right? Melinda.
It would be helpful.
Big Fawn Road. Just to piggyback on that real quick, I'm actually here for Fawn Pond, but very interested in this conversation for 2 reasons. One, because I'm a huge recycler, so I do all my composting, split everything up. And Carol, I think you've done a phenomenal job with that whole project. And the little fridge magnet thing that you sent out a couple of years ago that said, hey, throw your stuff in the composter, that's gonna save all this, tonnage, it's gonna save us like $15,000. I thought that was phenomenal. I'm like, that's great. I think that's so compelling. It is for me. For a lot of people, it isn't. So I think the idea of doing the, pay as you throw is a good one, because for me, I'm gonna separate all my stuff out and take the time to do that. For someone who wants to pay, let them pay. If they would prefer to pay and they can cover their own trash, then I think that's reasonable.
Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. All right, so we'll move on. Anything further on this budget?
No, I mean, it would be great if, even if the program started supplementing a certain percentage of the program to take it off the.
Right. Yeah, and one question you'd have also is you want to make sure we got a lot of woods. We don't want people driving around throwing the trash in the woods because they don't want to pay for bags, and that's the other side of those issues.
Yeah.
That's right. Good one. Yeah. All right. Good. Great. So we're taking these up, as you might have noticed, all in total when we get to it. So
All right.
appreciate what you're doing
Thank you.
there, Carol. Thanks. All right. What next there?
You want
Farm
to go into
Pond.
Farm Pond?
Yes.
So-
Please. And thanks for.
You don't want to talk about the recycling budget. That was simple and easy and not controversial. And the warrant article,
What about the
we've
warrant?
said, yes, let's keep going.
The warrant article is.
Okay.
That's the paving?
Paving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we're
Yeah,
saying.
I think we're good on that.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're gonna,
Thank you.
finalize the warrant and all that, but we're great. Yeah.
Okay.
We're enthusiastic about the pavement.
Yes. Thanks, Carol. All right, Farm Pond, thank you all for your patience. And David, I'll leave it to your, you and the Farm Pond crowd here to.
Oh, sorry.
Catherine's the chair of the
Looking at me.
Farm Pond Advisory Committee,
Yeah.
and Melinda is we've been working with her on the lake management plan. She's been.
Oh, excellent.
We both went to kindergarten together, yes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Townies, really?
Our sons are in the same 4th grade class now, so yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Awesome.
So this budget is, it's not a general funded budget, it's its own funds. And the budget as submitted was an increase of $3,100 or a 3.1% increase. But again, I've talked to advisory and the percentage doesn't matter so much on these where it's not a general fund budget.
Well, you put a revenue estimate into David with an extra fee, right? With an increase in the fee?
Yeah, at one time we had talked about that it would be good for Farm Pond to pay part of the capital cost of the lake management program. So that's where that came from.
Yeah,
So-
well, and I had a question about that too, because it would also be good for Farm Pond to pay part of the administrative costs of Farm Pond that doesn't take place at the pond. Jeannie's time and any other town hall time that is spent on Farm Pond, which doesn't really get factored into that budget, right?
We don't charge that no. We don't charge our time.
But it would be good to do that, because that's a service or an activity that people do pay for through their sticker fees, and those prices should account for what the cost is.
Right. Yeah, it is. It does add to the total cost.
That was a
Sure, we
discussion
agree.
about the enterprise fund, that brought that up.
Well, he's
Yeah,
describing a
that's-
pseudo-enterprise fund
Right.
approach, which still has a whole bunch of merit to,
Haven't discussed it at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
even,
to consider.
not even on the general.
So what I did convey to the committee
you haven't
was
discussed it at all.
We
so-
have
Understand,
Right.
you're just, this
That
gives
was
us an
just-
opportunity to think in the bigger terms here, where does this all
You
go?
guys like to talk about costs, I like to talk about revenues.
Yeah,
so what
It's
I
all balanced.
what I had was roughly a $25 increase on non-resident fees and a $5 increase on resident fees, and that netted around $9,000 or $9,500. So the committee recently met and discussed this, so maybe that's where you could.
Well, I think you asked our committee to review the budget and see if we recommended any increase in fees. And at that time that we met, and this was about 3 weeks ago, we actually had not had the discussion about, we had not heard your particular input about raising $5 or $25. And when we reviewed the budget, money in from the fees and expenditures out being what the line items are, salaries of lifeguards, et cetera.
did you use a 1% increase, is that what you
That was
did?
built in, Judy presents, it's not our budget, but that was in
That's what
there.
you did, right? Ruth?
And, yes.
Okay.
So looking at that, and as we've done this for the past, I'd say, that I've been involved, I've been involved for the past 4 years when we've looked at it, we did not recommend an increase in sticker prices based on the fact that the fees were supporting the costs of running the summer Farm Pond swim area. So that was our feedback, that when we discussed it, we voted not to recommend an increase.
And when was the last time we changed the fee there? Does anybody recall? Was that fairly recently or not?
Not a long,
A while back.
I think it's been about
5 years,
4 or
okay.
5 years.
Yeah. But the trend of the revenue, bless you, you've never had trouble. I look at Ruth too, because she does this.
we've never had problems supporting our budget.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There's always been plenty of revenue to support the budget, even including this budget, which has, and I have one detailed question about the maintenance fee for you've added $5,000 there.
We had the same question, our committee.
And my question was, I wonder if we contemplated that when we did what we did there, that we knew that we were going to be dealing with additional maintenance costs on that.
Well, I think that as Jeannie came to our meeting to present the budget to us, which we didn't vote to support, we did discuss that, and the general, not a vote, but the feeling of the committee was that we questioned that $5,000 because we didn't understand it. We didn't understand how the maintenance though we are passionate about the maintenance of the stormwater systems around Farm Pond as a whole, we did not understand its addition as a line item in the budget that seemed to support the operation of Farm Pond as a summer swim area.
Understood.
So we didn't understand that.
Okay. So that's something that
David had added, which we had just not.
Like if I were you,
Jeannie
I'd say,
brought that
why
forward.
isn't that in CM&D's budget?
We
or
did,
something?
that was exactly, we did.
Yeah, I would
That was exactly our
fight the
conversation.
same way on that, I understand that.
CM&D has been providing services of cleaning out, I guess, stuff that was installed a couple of years ago down there for stormwater runoff. So CM&D has picked up the slack. We've also hired some outside people to come in and do different.
Is this for the outside people, the $5,000 here, or the extra that we're talking about?
It's for somebody to do the work, but it
Well,
wasn't
CM&D
necessarily.
does it. How is-
CM&D.
You talking about the rain garden? What are you talking about?
Yeah, they're cleaning out the rain gardens.
I mean, that's
When
not
there's
being
a couple
maintained.
swales.
Is that not being maintained?
What it entails is that
I don't think it is, but let Jeannie speak.
CM&D no longer can do the work that we need done down there. So,
Because
because they have other things to do. I mean, it includes cleaning out, it includes maintaining the rain garden, weeding it. There's a whole line of swale that goes down, it's riprap that goes down Lake Street into the rain garden. They need to be basically, a company like Truex has to come in, it's expensive.
It's a
we pay by the
specialized
day, it's a specialized
maintenance.
equipment. They have to come in and clean it out, it hasn't been done in a couple of years.
Well, that's wrong. I mean, that was intentionally put in there to clean the runoff.
That's right.
Pipe. It's not being maintained, it was a complete waste
But
of money.
Farm Pond doesn't have that in their budget. So, in order to get this done,
Oh, complicated. This is a new.
I don't think that's in CM&D's budget either. It was
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in CMD's
I'll
budget
add it
if it's
anywhere.
changed to whatever other priorities they have. I mean,
right.
if CMD can't do it, it's because they didn't make it a priority to do it. So the question is that, should they have higher priorities or lower priorities? But it's not that they can't do it. They can build a road at Pine Hill, they can do lots of different things.
Right.
So if they needed to contract with somebody to do this, they should have done it. I think this is, one of the best resources we have in town, and it relies on clean water. And we spent money and time to get that all straightened out and comply with standards and make sure it's clean. And what you're telling me is we're throwing it away.
No, I'm saying it's not. We don't want to have it thrown away.
We don't.
It needs to be maintained, and it needs to be maintained better than just
I'm not
being on
against putting it in this
policy.
budget, I don't care what budget it goes in, we just need to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's been, we try to go down there and we check something out, and then we call CM&D, can you go down and take this? But there's not an active management plan book that CM&D is following.
Get a bunch of 4-year-olds with shovels down there, tell them what you want them to dig out. Tell you they will get done in one afternoon.
So who has ownership? Who's responsible for going forward? By putting it here, puts the onus on you, basically, right?
That was our question, and we care that it's in a budget, to your point, we don't care what budget it's in. I think we agree with the overall sentiment there, but we questioned the budget of the Farm Pond summer people paying, people who are using the pond in the summer, those fees paying for that. That's all.
Yeah, the way I look at this budget though, this is a budget that people from other towns pay part of. So we ought to be shoving as much stuff into this budget as we can because it's not all coming out of Sherborn people, not everything. Not David's salary.
There's a
things like that.
regulation that says that user fees from non-residents, I think, and Ruth and I went over this, cannot be put into the general fund, cannot support that kind of activity.
Well, no, that's not a general fund activity.
But it's not now, but, that was kind of the thinking that we had about what the fees would pay for. That was part of our discussion.
I mean, anything that improves the pond, we should be doing cost recovery for up to a point. I mean, I agree with you. If it's really just town-wide benefit, but something like that, if that's not clean, that pond's gonna be closed more days than it's already closed every summer.
Well, our committee is adamant that there should be money somewhere because we got a grant to put these stormwater management things in. It's important to the pond, health of the pond, that we maintain them, so it's gotta be somewhere. I mean, we want it in some budget.
We do want it in a budget.
We're just not
surprised.
Sure which it should be CM&D or.
I thought there was some agreement with the abutter there on having to maintain those things too.
Did you part of us? No.
No, there was no agreement when that was
I don't
installed?
think so.
No, he agreed to a lot of.
You agree the easement,
You agreed to a lot.
Wasn't there some condition on?
Yeah, but not to maintain it.
No, no, no. So wasn't there some condition on us maintaining it? If he agreed to let us install on his property, I think there was.
I think just the fact that we got a grant to do it is, there should be a maintenance allowance. You know, I mean, what's the point of getting a grant, spending all the money to put all these improvements that are gonna protect the pond when you don't maintain it?
Well, we totally agree, and this is now reflecting the fact that we're gonna do that
Yeah,
and consciously,
Figure out where it comes from.
yeah, and so
I
it's,
think my 2 cents here, Peter, is that
Yeah.
if we really want to make sure that it gets done, it's better off in the farm pond budget, because then we know that it's going to get done. Whereas if it's thrown into the bigger stew of CM&D things,
right.
when they get called away with an emergency or they have to do the Pine Hill Road and so on, this might not get done. Whereas if it's part of the operating costs of the pond, just like they run electricity to the shack and whatever else are the standard costs, then you know it's going to get done every year. And I think it's important from the points raised here that environmentally this needs to get done. Number one. Number two, it does benefit the users of the pond because they all benefit from having clean, healthy water. So it's justified, and it's a maintenance cost as opposed to capital cost. If we were talking about, investing in $1 million in a new parking lot and all that kind of stuff, that would be unfair just to charge it to the users. But this is maintenance of systems that are intended to protect the pond for the users.
Yeah, from the users.
So to that end, are you suggesting that the sticker fee should be supporting it?
Well, I'm suggesting that it go in the budget and into your budget so we know that it gets done. And does
It's
the
really
budget support that?
Just for clarity's sake, it's his budget, it's our budget.
Right, it's the selectmen's budget, yeah.
Right, I mean,
But then I feel like I can make sure it gets done, whereas I don't have the same. But if we put the 5,000 into the farm pond budget, is there enough revenue
Yes,
there to do that, or do we have to raise fees?
there'll still be about 11,000 left.
Without raising.
Without raising fees.
Right. Without
Well,
raising
that doesn't add up with David's numbers though, right? David's numbers in here, he talked about the amount of revenue you get from those increases, so I calculated out the revenue should be, based on those estimates, about 113,000, is that not right?
But the amount,
Based on your numbers,
as
based on
a-
existing, plus the additional amount.
Oh, if you add the 9,500 from changing the
That's right.
permit fee
Yeah,
on top of.
on top of the existing amounts that you've
The
estimated here.
Right.
Okay.
So
But that revenue coming in would reduce this number.
Revenue
would be available to offset the budget
the $5,000.
as defined, which would
The
include
money-
5,000.
the money that's collected this current year is available for funding next year's budget. Right now, you have available for next year is 119,000.
Right,
Any money collected after, like during
meeting.
next fiscal year, will be available the following fiscal year. It's reserved for appropriation, it's not a revolving.
so, but just to follow up that, given that the fiscal year starts again on
Yeah.
July 1st,
Then
you're actually gonna receive a whole bunch of permits
Well,
prior to
you're gonna
that,
receive the
which will
permits
come
ahead
in
of time.
here.
Right,
Yeah, because if you look at the farm
Yeah.
fund fees last year, wherever they are,
but it has to
Most
be
of them came in-
appropriated at town meeting.
Then
It has to be available at town meeting.
to offset, to fund this budget.
Yes,
No, and we know you already have enough to fund this budget
right,
and another 10 grand,
Exactly.
arguably,
yep, right.
from what's shown here. That I understand.
That's the question I was trying to ask. If there's enough money to fund the $5 grand
Yes.
already
Yes, there
there,
is.
then why don't we put it in there? Because then we can be sure that it will get done.
it's in this model,
It's
right?
already.
Yes, yes.
It's already in there.
And it doesn't require an increase in fees, because as we look forward, not just to this year, but future years, it looks like we're going to have enough money if we
you ever repeat stuff.
Yeah, I think it's foolish not to increase fees a little bit. And here's why, you've got lots of deferred maintenance going on, that's.
Well, that gets into the bigger discussion of
Lots of
capital
stuff,
and the projects.
lots of stuff that needs to be done there, and every year, we kind of trickle by with, lifeguard costs and that stuff exactly equals or comes close to equal and what the price of the front on stickers.
Well, the fee increase was, I think we, had, I don't know who had said it, but it was about the capital project of the lake management plan, the pond management plan. Could that number be reduced if Farm Pond was paying part of it, or there was donations from people and fundraising? I just can't remember whether it was here or it was in the advisory meeting. But that's where that came from.
Right, but still, the fund that, that's a warrant article of what, 20,000 or something? I forget the number that's set aside, so let's say it's 20,000. So those fees, even if you increase the fees, even if we said we're gonna increase the fees, those won't come into play until next fiscal year. So really, what's available to fund some or all of that 20,000 is this 119,000, unless you get some
Unless you
additional
sell stickers
fees.
early.
What's that?
Unless you sell stickers.
That's right, unless you sell some before town meeting.
Town meeting.
Right. So I think we're on the same page. But the larger, broader picture is just as you're describing, is deferred maintenance and capital, which often become capital items.
Right, so we could do this, look back a year, every single year, and just kind of trickle along based on, we're gonna raise the lifeguard salaries 1% every year. And then stuff like the catch basins not being cleaned up, or the
roof, we spent something on the roof this year, some other minor repairs. And I think in the back of my head, if the money's not in the Farm Pond, then I'd be using the town buildings account because it's a town facility.
But it's a facility that we could fund out of a budget that people who aren't town residents and taxpayers pay for. And I would rather do it that way if we can.
But there's a more specific question, which is this engineering study of the pond, how are we planning to pay for it?
The engineering study?
Yeah.
We had built in earlier that we do 1,200 out of town facilities and 1,200 out of Farm Pond.
Which we're doing this fiscal year.
Right.
And that's only $2,400 is what the study costs?
Yeah. No, that's what the person to help us develop the scope of services to put out an RFP.
That's the
It's almost
study,
like a
to do
design.
the study.
Yeah.
Yes, but what about the study itself?
The study itself is what is in the capital plan.
It's a warrant article item for 20,000.
But what I'm trying to say is, how do we plan to pay for that?
That's a general fund request as a capital.
But there's
The motion that's going to be made is to fund it entirely out of free cash or something?
But part of the idea behind the plan, I'm sorry for interrupting, would be to have whoever takes on the study, the plan, to help us with grant funding. I mean, there are specific grants that specifically fund these kinds of plans. And the state, I think, would go overboard to help Sherborn maintain this, because every phone call I've made to DCR and explained the situation that we're in, the first thing they say is, make sure you get a management plan and do it soon. And secondly, this is phenomenal, like they're so amazed to hear what pristine condition our pond is, and we are surrounded.
And you're here to describe this, so could you just give us, everybody, the benefit of a brief description of what's going on, since we jumped to it?
Yes, and I-
Jumping all around? Yeah, sure. But would
Thank you.
take advantage of your knowledge base here.
Yeah.
And we already approved the 2,400 or 3,000 bucks or whatever it was, right? Didn't we?
No.
We did
Oh,
not.
maybe.
I thought we
No, I
did.
don't think so.
We didn't?
I don't think so. I think I was just paying for it from facilities.
Oh, so we didn't approve it, you were just going forward with it.
I was.
It's underway.
I did the RFQ and then we chose the person and now we'll be talking to them about the scope.
All right, so
And
we-
then I would sign a contract and.
And so
not
that's
sign a
underway.
contract, but bring it forward.
That's really my question.
Yeah.
That's happened.
Yeah.
So we are gonna put this on.
I'm sorry.
I don't believe it. All right, and I just want to, as a quick aside, I think we are jumping though, because I'm not sure, I know I don't feel like we've settled the whole
We have.
fee thing, all that
Yeah.
stuff, okay. So without just kind of reading through, I just put this together quickly today for this meeting, so it certainly isn't extensive, but it gives you the gist of what we've walked through. Things you need to keep in mind is that with over 3,000 lakes and ponds in Massachusetts, most of them are polluted, unfortunately, and about 2/3 of them by non-native species of invasive weeds. I don't know if any of you, I know that Paul is familiar with Marion Moore. She is a professor of biological sciences over at Wellesley College and resident here. And I actually emailed her about this meeting. And I just want to quickly share with you the email she sent back to me this morning. And she said, funding and completing a lake management plan is probably the single thing the town of Sherborn can do to protect this gem of a lake. Keeping invasive species out and planning for potential effects of climate change are among the topics I would hope such a plan would address. This is her gig, this is what she does. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that she's in full support. Farm Pond, these past hundreds and hundreds of years, has benefited from the natural buffers. So you have the hills that protect it. That body of water is significantly higher than other ponds and lakes and rivers in the area. It's naturally acidic, which has helped maintain its pristine condition. Keeping motorboats out has been enormous, so you don't get the weed hitchhikers. That's really what has messed up a lot of the ponds and lakes in Massachusetts and in so many other areas. We haven't had, as many people frequenting the pond, those kinds of things. And then more recently, the stormwater runoff management. All have helped the pond. The problem is that what we learned a couple of years ago when we brought in DCR, they did this thing called weed watchers. And this guy comes in and he brings in these weeds and he says, these are the kinds of weeds that are literally banging on the doorstep of Farm Pond. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And he was very, very clear that at some point in the future, these weeds are going to make their way into Farm Pond. And so when he heard that we didn't have a plan, he said, you've got to get a management plan. You've got to document existing conditions, and you have to make projections going forward, and you have to monitor what's coming in and out of the pond. So I kind of took that on as my little project and started making phone calls. I just kind of put in here just a couple of quick examples. Niles Pond in Gloucester was brought to my attention as a fairly comparable pond to Front Pond. They ran into trouble. They didn't protect their body of water. Last year, their estimate just for hydro raking those weeds and disposal of the weeds was over $100,000 just to manage the weeds, not even the rest of the stuff. Lake Atituate, right next door, as we all know, is a mess. And those machines that you see that they park on the side that do the hydro raking, the machines themselves can cost about $100,000, and then you pay more to do the actual raking. It's really, really expensive, and it doesn't take everything out. So even with all the money you spend and all of that intervention, once it's there, you cannot eliminate it. It's there for life. It's just a management game after that. It was interesting to me when I was kind of trying to put some information together for you that last year in Natick at their annual symposium for Lake Atituate, they talked about Sherborn, so I kind of put that in there. They said specifically, the selectmen there, that we need to start collaborating with the towns around us because our weed problem is going to become their weed problem. And I thought, wow, they're on top of this. So we need to do the same. And then just kind of skipping down to the bottom, this is Melinda's idea of, just gimmicky, what are the top 6 reasons why we need to get this plan? Farm Pond really is the #1 asset in this town. There are plenty of other towns, Lincoln, Carlisle, Concord, Lexington, they have phenomenal schools too. They have open space, they have, some great private citizen resources, but we have Farm Pond and they don't. It really is the #1 asset, and we need to protect it. We have to watch out for the fact that all these other ponds and ponds and lakes around us are covered with all these weeds and extra phosphorus and nitrogen that's destroying the water quality, making it difficult to enjoy that water. If we do our job now, we have a really good chance of preventing something in the future, or at least having a good enough handle on it that it doesn't get completely out of control. We need to think about the fact that we're already looking at changes around the pond. So we all know that the geese have made their way there and are really enjoying it. And the vegetation around the pond, Catherine and I know, because we grew up in town, it used to be heavier. It used to be, you grew up in town too. It used to be thicker. So as people are buying homes and changing their properties, which they're certainly entitled to do, they're changing the natural vegetated buffers around the pond, and that's really what has helped to maintain, keep that water clean. So you have to think of soil runoff, you have to think about phosphorus and fertilizer and pesticides and herbicides and all that stuff, and it's just going to go straight into the pond.
On that subject, are you following, or is the Conservation Commission reporting to you in terms of notice of intent for lots that front on Farm Pond and
No, there's not a link there.
controls on?
No.
There's no link, but I mean, do you know what they're doing with those?
I mean, to our understanding, they're doing everything they're capable of doing, in terms of, the laws are not, hundreds of feet of vegetative buffer. We've gotten all sorts of information about that. We've taken the stance of trying to educate the town and make a link with the butters and provide them information, but we certainly haven't followed up on conservation to make sure they're
Would you propose any kind of a bylaw to protect the pond?
We would if we could. We could, absolutely.
We can, we've done that, I noticed you.
Well, it might make sense. I mean, we know folks up there are concerned about their views. I think the vegetation helps to screen things, and I think we should think about restricting cutting on farm pond boundaries.
Well, the thing I'd like to regulate is the use of fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides, because those things wash into the pond, and the phosphorus is very much activates the weed growth and the algae growth and stagnation. I forget the fancy word for the loss of oxygen in the ponds. Eutrophic. Because we did have that professor from Wellesley here several times.
Yeah.
But maybe we should be looking at a bylaw that's going to provide
protection
around the environmental restrictions.
And won't that be a product of this management plan?
Yes, that's what we're hoping.
exactly.
That again, when we talked to CCR, and that was the one thing that they suggested as a sort of a medium for getting any sort of protection going.
So the question is, Paul, whether, and Mike, whether we're trying to do something sooner than what would be a
Like
year
a
from now.
placeholder, something to prevent it from getting worse between
Yeah.
now and whenever that's done.
And whenever that's done, we really need to take, that we're smarter taking action.
Both the federal government, the United States Environmental Protection Agency has been talking about anti-phosphorus regulations. And there are communities that have adopted anti-phosphorus regulations, and maybe we should be looking at specifically short-term fix on phosphorus control.
But I would add clearing too. I would add clear cutting within 200 feet or something. We have riverfronts are protected, but our farm is not protected at 200 feet. You couldn't cut a tree on your yard within 200 feet of that river without some kind of permission probably, or build something within that distance. So we don't have similar protections around it.
Well, would we look for this committee, you can recommend to him and us anything you want, right? And we can act on it or not, or tweak it or whatever. So if you had a burning desire to know in the short-term types of thinking that's going on here, whether there's something to suggest that we could bring forward sooner than later, we can still act. We haven't signed the warrant. We closed it, so I don't know.
We could reopen it, it's important.
That's right.
What we're hearing is it's
But
it's
somebody
at a
has to
critical
protect
stage.
these things, and that's partly why we're having the study. And I hope the study's going to include sample things that it would be easy to adopt. if we don't wait for the study to be done, then someone has to actually go ahead and do this. And that probably means asking the town council to,
Well, even a moratorium kind of thing, the way, we just did with the marijuana facilities, something that for a period of a year would prevent, X, Y, and Z until we've got a study that supports what the regulation should be.
But the point I'm making is at least having this committee weigh in on that
Sure.
while that's ongoing. I think that would be quite valuable because you're obviously passionate about it. Spend a lot of time thinking about these things, so.
It's that kind of discussion, I think, needs to bring Concom in, because none of us have the experience.
No, I understand, but if you said-
Why we're looking for an experienced person to give us the management plan, or at least lay out some things, and then follow up with the discussion. But for this town meeting, I mean, it's too late, to put anything in place, but I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking for some protections.
this is behind county council.
We have had significant discussions within the committee about the vegetative buffer.
Well, if you have ideas that you want to share,
Yeah.
please share them and we can think about whether there's any steps to be taken.
And we have been focusing on this plan as sort of a meeting for this, but we didn't think about the options.
So just a question of if, based on what you described, if it delays a year or two for the plan, you're gonna lose more.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
That's the point.
That's right. We need
That's
to
great
plan.
feedback.
Yeah.
So,
Good, so we can raise the fees.
no, well,
So, and maybe this is not the place for this question, so we just don't fully understand the fees tie into building a slush fund for capital expenditures, and if we're not.
Well, here's my question
Sorry,
for you. Here to help with that discussion.
Yeah.
Here's my question. What is your objection to the fees like David described? For example, a $5 increase to the resident permit to $65, and a $25 increase to the non-resident permit lottery folks to $325. What's your major objection? Understanding you're an advisory committee and we listen and learn from your passion and expertise.
I think our concern was based on our prior understanding of the point of the budget to operate, the swim area. So I think that's where we have been focused on understanding, fees in, expenses out. Again, there's a strong opinion of the committee that the whole parking sticker was instantiated in the 1970s or 70s, I think, to control overcrowding and at the pond. And prior to that, anybody could come and swim, and the town was funding everything about the reservation. So I think, again, we've got that history on our committee, and we just hadn't been exposed to this idea of building up any sort of capital reserve within user fee budgets. We worry about the farm pond budget, and this operation of the pond as a swim area is one piece of what we're doing. I mean, again, it's definitely a piece, and it's an important piece of what we're looking at, but it's a selectmen's budget. We've been worrying about overall pond and overall pond testing and weed watchers, and so this has not been our focus to research, how increasing fees down the line. And by the way, there's 17 different kinds of fees, and then you have that in front of you, how that would impact. I mean, there's more to look at here. There's swim lesson revenues, there's other things. So that's where we could probably go.
Well, fees that are charged there for what?
Various things that go to make up the farm pond budget. There's, there's swim lessons, there's boat permits, there's other things that go. It's not just the resident sticker. So that's, we've done
okay.
to have this discussion.
I appreciate that education you're giving us.
Thanks.
So, and so, I mean, you've talked about this capital light, but I think it's more than that.
Fees.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's more than that in the sense that there's a lot of hidden costs to even administering that swim area that go beyond the lifeguards and the actual stuff that's done right down there, from police patrols and whatever CM&D does do down there, to Jeannie's time, to any of this stuff that happens in the winter. And so none of that stuff really gets factored directly in to the budget the way you're looking at it, but it's all overhead expense that the town's absorbing.
Right, but I think maybe is the point, is that if it is considered an asset of the town, just like you have all of the citizens of the town funding the school, even though someone might not have children attending Pine Hill, their tax dollars still help fund the school, that Farm Pond should have that same kind of recognition. Being an asset of the town, that all of the citizens of the town, whether you decide to go swimming there or not, is kind of irrelevant. You pay into that because having that pond increases the value of your home and, adds all of these other wonderful things I don't have to, describe to you. The fees from the stickers would specifically fund those things related to kind of the operations of the waterfront specifically. The kind of capital budget we would like all of the citizens of the town to help pay for is more like the entire reservation. So anything that it really goes out beyond the beach, if you will. That's kind of.
that has
I understand
that has
the-
been
I
our
understand the theory, I
discussions,
get
yes.
that, and I think 40 years ago, that was probably a really
You just don't
sound
that.
theory. I just think we're a fiscally constrained town, and this is a source of revenue. It's a really good asset, but it's also an asset that attracts people from other towns. It's not a question really of making people who use it pay for it to the exclusion of townspeople. I mean, I get that point. There is some tax revenue, and there's people who walk there and skate there and do all kinds of other things where they're not paying for stickers. But there are, you could go through the town's budget and figure out what that asset actually costs, and you could figure out a way to cover that with user fees. And I bet everybody would be more or less happy, even if the fees went up, they'd still go to Farm Pond. Now, philosophically, we might not want to do that, but to me, we're past philosophy, at least this year and for the foreseeable future, where if there's a way to, balance a budget with a revenue source, we should be looking to do that.
What I hear Michael saying is, even before you get to the issue of capital costs, that there are operating costs that are being subsidized by the taxpayers, like Jeannie's time and police time and all kinds of other costs that are not being paid by the users. That's before you get to the issue of capital. Capital, I can understand the argument that capital projects should be shared. But that's not the point that Michael was making.
I'm not making this point, and I understand their point too.
There's a whole bunch of operating costs
Yeah.
that haven't been fully investigated and identified that are just the ordinary costs. Right now, we're only funding the lifeguards, and it's kind of the very specific costs down there. But a portion of David's time, a portion of Jeannie Guthrie's time,
Insurance premiums, a big slug of that is.
there's like a whole variety of police patrols. There's a whole variety of other costs which could be looked at and determine what they are. Those are operating costs. They aren't capital costs.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that's what I thought you were
Yeah,
saying.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
And I think our committee, if we saw the budget laid out that way, we'd certainly be able to,
Well, just think about it, if you tried to go back to that enterprise type of approach, you would be tacking on 15 to 25% in these additional costs. Clearly, you would have to absorb
The
that
committee,
as an enterprise fund.
the
but-
committee back when that was proposed, when Doug was chair, we looked at going to an enterprise fund. The committee at that time really investigated that, and it was not viable for this because of, there's so many little details in that, it just didn't make sense to go that route. But it was looked at, and I totally understand, where this is coming from, but
This is an
take that
intermediate
a little step further, and you're getting into nitty-gritty expenses. We hired, back in some of the town reports, as Doug is going through this, we used to hire and pay from a Farm Pond, but for police details down there. We changed that to a ranger. to cover some of it, but the town used to pay police to cover and monitor ponds. So, things have changed. So we didn't have, when we looked at this, we didn't have a direction as to why. To manage the pond for this year, including the extra 5,000, it looked like we had a balanced budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
the fee revenue is in the
Fee revenue
bank.
seemed to be fine.
Is
Now,
sufficient.
the only rationale that I'm hearing to increase the fees is to build up a reserve for the future.
Well, there's two rationales.
That's what I'm,
There's two paths. There's that, and there's absorbing the real cost, the things that don't make it into the budget because they're absorbed by other town departments.
well,
But we're not paying those out of this fee structure right now.
I
We're not paying it right
understand
now.
that you're talking about that,
Right.
but how physically do you plan to attach those extras to the farm pond budget? I mean, Ruth, I don't know. I mean, I understand that they're part of it, but do you plan to take part of Jeannie's salary and
No, but
put it
you
into the farm pond budget? I'm just not.
Pat, it's a cost accounting exercise that could be done in great detail, but it's not worth it. But
Right.
something similar to that was done by the elderly housing, and so there is a payment in lieu of taxes type of an approach, which does cover a whole, a big slug of things, including an allocation of insurance costs and things like that. So that can be done without too much difficulty, but clearly the budget covers the direct operating cost, doesn't really cover the full cost, the administrative cost of operating the fund. And so I think the argument is easily made that you could raise the fees. The fees that we charge now do cover the direct operating costs, but don't cover anything else. And otherwise you'd see that balance growing much more than it is right now. It's just barely enough to cover this budget right now. So, so I think we need to consider David's recommendations. Probably have some sort of another open session on before we do the fees. Right?
You need a public hearing, you have to get
Yeah.
input, if you want to hear from the citizens.
That's right.
Would you recommend it, you
Terms of
look at the
fees,
other
yeah.
cost categories too? I had brought up boat permits and then also the swim lessons,
Yes.
just something to look
I
at.
prepared if you change.
So boat permits have tripled
$5
since they were
because we will
introduced.
Change everything.
There were
They
no
haven't
boat permits.
changed in a very long
But
time. I
10
don't-
years ago, there were no boat permits at all. It was free.
Mm,
Yeah, when I was on the committee was when you started adopting paid boat
No.
permits.
We've
Oh,
always
No,
it went from a boat permit to no boat permit, and then we put
Right.
it back.
and,
So put 'em
and,
back.
but that would, yeah.
That was 10 years ago.
in 19, when this committee was formed, when I asked the selectmen. to
Well,
form
there was a
the committee.
period of time
That was
when
the
there were no
year.
boat permits?
That was the year that all of a sudden, somebody from the state, Fisheries and Game, came and complained.
I remember that.
And without looking up precedent or anything, the town administrator at the time has decided that there was gonna be no boat permits, and that triggered the start of the committee, and the boat permits have been in effect since, we've always needed a boat permit.
But you didn't have to pay for them for a period of time. And they started charging for them 10 years ago, Jeannie?
Yeah,
No, that goes back a
we had
ways.
them, and then they took the fee away.
They-
Right.
Yeah,
And then we started charging.
That was
But my only point on that,
it's the fee.
my only point on that is that fee has, I think, tripled since
The
2004 or
fee has
something like
not
that.
changed since.
Oh, yeah.
It's always $20.
It's
Well, it's
always
proposed for
been
30 on this.
Right.
So that would be a tripling of the
That,
fee.
that
So
was my.
we can increase fees.
50% increase.
I mean, so, anyway.
Yeah, no, this is
Yeah.
David's
With
proposal
that,
for.
that was something I put together just
Yeah.
to, one,
Pat put that together based on my recommendation of the
Okay.
5 and the 25.
Oh, I see.
Because I just
Yeah.
was throwing out all the permit fees, but
She's added it to these other things. Yes.
I feel like if somebody's coming into town, they want to use the pond, and I know that was a controversial, even selling stickers outside of town was controversial at first, and then
yeah.
people
And
got
we
more
had a
comfortable with that idea.
lawsuit and we went through all of that, you know.
But you got more comfortable with the number of them and so forth. So,
But a few years ago, we've always had a reserve for appropriations, I think, until a few years ago when ECR or somebody came in and all of a sudden we were told that the money, instead of building up this reserve, the money had to go into the general fund. So any excess coming out that we made in the summertime ended up in the general fund. And that was a few years before it got.
No, that's not true.
No,
No,
it's
it's the money that came back up, that was left over
That was
from the
left over.
budget,
Right.
not money.
Any money left over after the season had to go into the
For-
general
But it's
fund.
not, is it FEMA?
So,
It's a turn back, it's a turn back.
yeah, except that up until that point, we were building up a reserve and during that time frame, until they changed it back again to reserve for appropriations, we didn't want to build up any more because everything.
All right, I get you. At the end of the day, it's our budget.
Yes, that's right, it is your budget.
It is.
So your
It's the way you
input is
get
invaluable. It's wonderful. It's great, and particularly
This is
you're
great.
passionate
It's,
about it. And what you provide us for the summary. I think this warrant article, sees every opportunity to promote it that you can, so that you get folks to get behind it. It's a no-brainer from certainly where I sit.
So where
what
does
else
that
do we
leave
got?
us? Sounds like we're wrapping
I
this
think
up.
we are. In terms of the budget, we're going to take all of them in total and get happy.
But it looks like the
But-
5,000 is gonna be in the, at least I'm
Yeah.
gonna recommend
It's
that
probably
we
gonna
put
stay as long as
5,000
it's
Stays there.
proposed.
Yeah,
in the budget, just so that we're safe and make sure that gets done.
Yeah.
And regarding the warrant article, I believe we need to go to the capital budget committee and talk to, is that where we're?
I had already met with them once and
Okay.
gave them a brief, and then I gave them the RFQ document,
Yeah.
and I gave them, was it Lily Pond or something, as a sample. And, but they had some additional questions, so I think they want to meet specifically.
Yes.
We're happy
Did
to
you
do
want,
that.
are you gonna be part of that? Did you wanna join us?
I don't know when it is.
Yeah,
we haven't
we
said
just-
it.
yeah, we're working on that.
Okay, I got Elliot, now I got Jeannie.
Yeah, quick comment on Farm Pond. Farm Pond is just about 100% spring fed.
No.
The only thing that goes in there is just that culvert there with the retention pond that you made. And other than that, there is nothing that flows into Farm Pond. So any salt that comes off the street, this nice spring water just dissolves it, takes it over, takes it down to the river through Charles Goat Farm. So,
You mean underground, Elliot, you're talking?
what?
It goes underground, is that what
No, the red house, gatehouse, if you wanna call it that,
you're
there's a stone wall there,
Yeah,
and then on the other side of that stone wall is a putrid pond, but the water flows out through that into an open brook, under Farm Road, into Charles Coat Farm Pond, and down through the fields, and bye-bye into the river. So this nice spring water is keeping Farm Pond flushed out and in good shape.
Well, this study will
yeah.
describe a whole
It's
bunch of
something
them.
really
Yeah,
important.
I appreciate your,
Something certainly is
insights.
keeping it, but we wanna make sure whatever's keeping it in its
Amen.
state is continuing.
Amen.
And that's what DCR
But
recommended.
we've got all spring fed that's flushing this stuff out, and if various minerals get in there, they will quickly be
Okay.
flushed out.
all right, thanks, Jeannie, yes.
just real quick, we did give the RFQ to Norfolk Grant. They should have scope of services by the end of February at the latest, in plenty of time for town meeting, and we can also talk to them about bylaw.
You said you gave it to me, you mean they were awarded, there was
They were
a bid
awarded,
or a
but
competition or something?
they were awarded to come up with the scope of
Okay,
services.
good.
Okay,
They're a good choice because they're the firms that we hired to do the stormwater drainage.
Yes.
And the transfer
Yeah.
station.
yeah.
So they have a lot of experience.
This was just a mailing going out to others.
So we're sending that out?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a
We did
wonderful
it.
job.
Okay.
That was done by the intern.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Which one? The guy?
That,
Zach?
yeah.
Do we have to approve this or are you
It's just info only. You're already doing it, right?
We're gonna, I just got the addresses from Pat, so we'll have them printed up, colored copies, and get them out at the beginning of next week.
We'll give you a color.
Just so it's clear, we're talking about a mailing that's gonna go out from the town of Sherborn to the abutters around the farm.
Yes.
I would like to, this is going out, but we really need to tell the people how to care for their lawns in a way that doesn't impact the plant.
But I think
That's part of the
the
project,
committee's done that
is
before.
education.
There's a mailing.
I've got, and the reason that we added the little note at the bottom is I've got a number of booklets from DCR that are
But we drafted
printed.
something
And
years
we're
ago.
hoping that we can put those, notifying people that they're available and put those down in the selectman's office so that, because sending them all out, I mean, people will read only if they, if they
Yeah,
want
I
to.
thought you
But-
had something years ago that you used to send around with that information. No, was that a DCR publication? Or just kind of
No.
leaflet? No?
I don't remember sending a booklet, but there's a number of booklets, everything about buffers and informational booklets that we feel every abutter should really have, but we're gonna make them available during, select.
But we have a 20-year issue on the entire with phosphates going into estuaries and so on. We sent out a lot of educational materials which people apparently didn't read.
Well,
And that's why we had to go to regulations
Yeah.
and bylaws and town meeting stuff. So it's
Yeah.
the stuff that's out there that we can copy. But literature is important.
right.
This letter doesn't specifically address it, but there have been other.
The letter's seeking a member of,
Well,
Farm Pond Advisory,
we
yeah.
needed a butter,
we're trying to get a butter on our.
and,
And you're mentioning this plan that's underway.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
and to promote enthusiasm as well
Yes.
as.
So it's one. We're still doing a lot of,
Go for it.
education, and we'll continue to do education.
All right.
So Paul, they mentioned getting a grant, looking for a grant from DCR. Does that raise any of the issues we should be concerned about in terms of taking state money and having to open conduct to certain things like motors and other
DCR
concerns?
doesn't do that.
Yes,
There,
so far.
there always are conditions on state grants, but here, remember, we now own the waters of the pond, we
Right.
own the landings,
Right.
critical landing.
So you feel like we're more protected against some kind of state encouragement?
We are, we would actually have to look carefully at the grant conditions.
That's my point, yeah.
And if the grant condition is, as a condition of getting this grant, you will advertise the availability of the pond.
Right,
Yeah, right.
we are very aware of those sorts
Yeah.
of.
Centralized
Motorboats,
Poplars, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
If we get to that, then we may not want to do
We
that.
talked about trying to get state money to fund paving or something at one point, and the decision was it's not worth doing because it was gonna open us to those kinds of issues.
We would definitely come back if we found a grant that looks logical.
Good.
Get your support.
Regarding the fees, are you gonna make a decision, or you want us to review, or what's your direction?
No, we would have to have a public hearing. We'd want a lot of input to the extent people want to provide input. We'll certainly welcome more of your input, but I think we're,
We'd like the Farm Pond Committee to think about what's been said here today and see if you agree or disagree with the proposal.
They've already disagreed.
Well,
we can
revisit it.
Basically,
We can
Right, you
revisit.
don't like his budget.
They didn't have all the
We will,
information.
we will have another discussion about that. We will certainly talk about your ideas about, what the cutting and whatever you call that.
yeah.
Moratorium.
Zoning and something or other, but, yes, we'll add that to it.
And the fast lane gate at the entrance to.
That's.
What is that communication
There's a
look like though?
transponder.
If we have some recommendations.
I don't know.
Just to David.
To David.
Just go to, okay,
Yeah,
right.
go to David, he'll bring stuff to
Yeah,
us.
that's great, that's great.
That's perfect. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all the work you've been doing on the pond.
All right.
It's good.
All right.
A lot of energy in that committee is excellent.
Yeah, no, and you don't want to stifle it by any means.
good.
Right.
I was on that one too, Peter.
What's that?
I was on that one too, that committee too.
You know, you've been everywhere.
We've seen all the committees I know.
Yeah. So now we're into town buildings.
We doing a building inspector?
So, town buildings, which is actually,
Oh, town buildings, not building inspector.
let's discuss what we're doing with town buildings, shall we? So, because that one looks like David, you got some stuff going on there.
Well, the town buildings, I thought we just held it flat because we don't necessarily have a full capital plan of every building to decide what projects are needed, and that's what I'm working on.
The-
0.000 for percentage increase.
No, but reading your description, you're talking about you pulling away 16 or 17,000
Right.
related to energy efficiency and building support in an effort to meet advisory guidelines overall.
Because again, I had to find money somewhere, and this one is the one that's
So you're finding money
not
here
completely
to
allocated.
get out of the other budgets.
Right.
Or as we say, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
But there
Yeah.
are good reasons to be able to, reduce this sum.
Right.
I mean, there is going to be energy savings
Where's the capital? So you talked about the capital budget. Where are you on that one?
of the town buildings.
Yeah, town building capital.
I started working with an architect was helping me out putting it together, and then he hasn't come back yet.
But that's the longer
personal
range. We don't
reason.
have an NOI for capital items for town
Oh,
buildings.
no. No, we had one that was.
So I was explaining where you said he's in the study. He's in the early stages of a study. I just wanted to know what that entailed. And
Yeah, that'll be the long-term plans for each building.
okay.
Yeah, similar to what the schools did.
Yeah, good.
We don't
Really good.
we don't have.
So it makes good sense. I think it's great.
We have to do the same things that the schools are doing.
Yeah.
Look at all our buildings, where there needs to be maintenance.
Yeah,
I mean, we've put extensive, over the last 10, 20 years, we've put a lot of money in renovating all these buildings. And that was caused because pretty much the town didn't take care of buildings for a long time. And the community was faced with all of these projects that needed to be done. If we take care of the buildings and we invest in the buildings, we can prolong their life and ultimately save the taxpayers a lot of money.
I think that's what David's study's going to do. And that's what irked me about that farm pond rain garden maintenance.
Yeah.
That it's just not done for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Nobody really hears about that until it shows up as a warrant article after a couple of years of not being.
We do bring conservation down. They've been following up on what's the
Good.
plantings and all that kind of stuff. And she writes up a report and says, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. And we go, are you kidding?
Can I just talk about this town building with the what you're suggesting doing to meet advisory's guidelines? I think just caution us on that. There may be exposures, because here's, and I wrote down, geez, this kind of gets a little scary here, but what I did is I was looking at and before I realized we've got town buildings where we show town hall, separately show police station, separately show all those others, and you look at the electricity, you look at the maintenance, you look at the repairs and maintenance and all of that, and it seems like, and I don't know if it's accounting or what it is, but all the costs are being picked up, and most of the costs in terms of looking at actuals versus what we're budgeting are picked up in the town building area, and you don't see a lot of them in some cases in these other buildings. So I don't know whether if it's an accounting thing. I didn't compile them all together to see whether the overall thing. So presumably you haven't come to your recommendation. You know what I mean? In other words, there's not a lead sheet of all 4 buildings combined for these budget line items, which then shows you we've got room to move.
Right.
Because you certainly don't see that. I see exposures and things like repairs and maintenance equipment. We put $500, but in 2013 the actual for the town building was $6,000, and I don't know if that reflects we had 28 grand of alarm guy here in a 6-month period or whatever. And I don't even know where that shows in the actuals. I think that's a fiscal 14 actual thing, right? So I'm just saying that with a bit of caution, and I don't have a great sense of the detail, but if you look at some of these, look at...
Peter, the 16,000 that he's taking off of this is because of energy savings from energy improvements that were done, in part through the green energy program, in part through...
Well, and it's also building support, so maintenance stuff.
Right.
too,
I mean,
so.
Diane and I talked that we thought that could be absorbed.
Yeah, okay.
But
so I'm just being
I understand
cautionary.
it.
You
Right.
understand? That's
Right.
all. And things like CM&D, which was a fairly new building, most everything is, I'm sure, far beyond warranty or out of warranty and starting to wear down. And so there'll be a higher rate of increase of need in that building than we're used to.
Right,
The door that we see in this old building
But
that
still,
always
it's all theoretical until it's
need.
on paper.
Yeah. All right,
But
well,
that's why what's essential, like, what I really want to see is a plan, like the schools have come forward with, like a 10-year plan. And we go to town meeting each year with whatever number it is, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000.
Right.
To do what needs to be done. Fix the roofs, get the windows fixed, do what has to be done.
Yeah.
Rather than sit and let 20 years go by and then we go looking for $10 million to redo a building.
yeah,
We put that investment in every year, but how do we get to that projection?
Well, the person I brought in who was helping me on it had a personal circumstance. But the goal when he started, just before Christmas, is we were going to have that plan now, but it's not
So
done.
is it a next
I
year
can't-
item now at this point?
I mean, I'm hoping to get it done as soon as possible.
but you won't get it done in time to be reflected in this budget, I would suspect.
I would say that they would
Yeah.
approve the
Right.
dollars.
But so
before.
if you just follow what you just said, Paul, which you're preaching to the choir on that, that's likely to show us you need to do more maintenance than you're doing in all of these buildings, and you're going to need to do capital acquisitions, and some of those capital additions in their mind turn out to be technically not bondable. They're maintenance items again, which was the issue that the schools are dealing with. So, and here we are peeling back, a slug of this budget that may be insufficient as it is. And the other thing I throw in there is that we also are using this budget to make what I could argue are, I'll call them near capital additions. In this fiscal year, we're using a big slug of this budget that may not even be there. I don't know. To do the doors, the balance of $8,000 of the doors that we got the Sherborn Business Association grant for, right? So we're pulling it out of this budget, and then separately next year we're doing these rugs out of this budget,
Right.
if I understand.
Right.
So
Does it need to be done?
no, I'm saying that, but they're beyond the normal maintenance needs of these buildings and these budget levels. That's all. So that's all. Enough said. I could argue that besides reducing the budget by 16 grand, because we're going to do carpets that may be 15 grand or something, right?
It was 10.
10. All right. So what we're really doing is the normal steady state of this budget. We're pulling out more than 10% of it
Mhm.
for those two things.
But again,
what I'm saying?
Demonstrable savings that are
On the energy.
calculated based on the fuel costs. And this board and prior boards have worked, and the Energy Committee has worked hard to generate savings. And the taxpayers should see the
Right.
fruits of that.
Yeah. No, I just say what we're doing.
And if we're not going to have a serious plan, long-term plan this year, why don't we let the taxpayers get the benefit of it? And then when we get the plan in place, then we can go to the voters and say, this is what we need to invest.
I'm with Paul. I mean, unless this building or one of the other buildings is going to fall down, which it hopefully isn't, I think we wait until we get the plan and then we know what we need to do.
Yeah, but we still, again, we're taking more than 10% out of the normal operating budget. So if you were asked Diane, who's really the manager of this budget, in the detailed day-to-day manager of this budget, I bet she's losing sleep over this a bit.
Roll the dice.
You roll the dice. All right. Well,
But I mean,
We've gotta live with it going
You say we're
forward.
taking 10% of it, but Paul's saying a lot of that, or maybe all of it's accounted for by energy savings.
I
right?
hope so. I hope so.
That's what we're hoping.
Yeah,
Well, that's
because
what we're
we
hoping.
changed light bulbs. Because we've changed light bulbs.
That's what we're based it on.
And
That
then-
budget picks up anything that goes wrong through the year too, and generator fails, that kind of thing.
Alarm system.
The IT guy, when somebody forgets to plug their computer in and their computer doesn't work, and we call in the IT guy, and he's $120 an hour, or whatever, it's just a sick plug. Here, plug that in. All that stuff. And we
I hope
got
that's a
To plug in our computers.
but that I'd put any amount of money that's happened.
I think you've historically had I don't know what the turn back was last year.
We've always turned money back,
All right, so there you go.
always had to turn.
What's your alarm comment, though? You have an alarm comment?
Yes, we're actually having a meeting of the minds regarding the alarm. I got in touch with the fire chief and I called my contact at American Alarm and I asked him to come in the best tech he has. And we're going to come in, we're going to take a long look at this alarm system and why we've had so many issues. And so it's possible it might be capital next year.
Next year.
It's possible.
But in the meantime, we got
In the meantime,
$30,000 of.
everything's quieted down
service
right now,
calls,
so
yeah.
we need to even talk about it.
All right,
Yeah.
no, wait.
That might
Shh, don't spook it. All right, enough said. I said what I said. Okay, good. Legal. Here's a classic one of deficit spending, eh?
But we are actually spending less. Lawsuits have been disposed of, including the largest one that we've been dealing with for a long time. And the rate of utilization has gone down this year. Last year at this time we were
Way
at
up.
28% less
Yeah.
left, and now we're at 38% that we're left, so there's 10 more percentage points ahead of where we were last year. And as we look forward, if we don't have the big trial and the briefing and all that stuff that we were facing earlier this year.
No, I'm, we're going in with eyes wide open. We've negotiated a good contract for general, services from town council, right? And this basically covers that with a little extra for outliers. And we're dealing with some outliers still, but we've gotten rid of a bunch of outliers. So we say, geez, we see no reason to budget for unknown outliers. That's all right. You guys are lawyers, so if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. See how I did that?
That trick, yeah, that's good.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, we'll
That's right. Same old,
if
same
we
old.
need it. but-
Yes, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned some big case got settled. Can we know what that was?
It was the Sweet Meadow Farm lawsuit.
Not settled.
A decision was rendered by a land court.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
And has that been discussed or mentioned or noted how that ended up?
It was reported in the newspapers.
I guess. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure you can find out.
I'll look.
Okay. All right, so we're into insurance. And I see what you're doing. You're suggesting, David, what we have is general insurance, which is the Maya policy for auto insurance, the farm ponds, the buildings, the liability insurance. We also have a big amount for workers' comp. Is that through Maya, or is that something separate?
No, that's through mine.
That's through Maya. Okay. And that's basically half, almost, or well over a third of that.
Right, and they usually come in and do an audit each year of the workers' comp numbers and you get a refund or have to pay them more.
Yep.
Each year. I think we recently got a refund.
We get quite good credits. I mean,
Well, we get credits and grants that aren't reflected as netted here. Those
We
go
get
elsewhere.
back into the general fund, doesn't it?
And we don't typically contemplate those as revenue items in the model, so those are gravy items, basically, right?
So every year they recommend you budget a 10% increase, and I just turned it back thinking it would be a little less than.
Yeah.
It would be under 6.5.
Hey, David, this recommends an increase in the deductible. Do our policies require an increase in the deductible? Have we decided to increase the deductible, or is that just marked up?
Where did you see that?
It looks like it's going from
Yeah, it's an old,
2,500 to 2,750
I didn't see that.
deductible expense.
We increased the deductible a couple of years ago, right?
Well, on insurance deductible expense, it says 2,750 this year. It's at 2,500 last year.
It's never enough.
Well, I mean, so we don't know what our deductibles are, or we.
It depends on how many claims you have. Each claim has a deductible.
$25 deductible.
Okay. Well, in 13 it says we spent nothing. And in 12, it doesn't have an entry for it, and in 11, it says we spent $16,052.
Why is that even an expense?
Because we have to pay.
It has to be
No,
paid.
I understand. So that, you're just saying,
And
we'll have one item where there's, because
they
that's our
allowed for- I mean, they
deductible.
budgeted for one item, but
Okay.
Well, that's what I'm
there's a
asking.
lot more, and they come out of the people's budgets, like if the highway had, you know, if something happened there and the deductible is gone,
They
then
absorb it in
they absorb it in
maintenance
their
or
budget.
something.
Yes.
So we do budget for one, and our deductible went up by 10%. I guess that's where it started. This is
Yes, everything went up 10%.
it did.
Well, so what you're saying is, why would you increase that by 10%?
So unless you signed another contract that had a 10% increase in the deductible.
No.
So that's
It's just an automatic, I think, that.
Okay, well we probably can save $250 there. You like that? Did I just balance the budget?
Man, you did.
There you go.
$250 a mic right there. I'm starting to come up here and telling you stuff. Good one. You're the man, you're paying attention. Excellent. All right, building inspectors.
Building inspectors, there are a couple of changes I made to that budget after talking to Walter about whether he could look at those changes. So it was small potatoes, but he was in agreement with.
So you brought it down a little bit, yeah, in what you're gonna wind up with, okay.
Is this paid for out of fees, or do those fees go to general revenue?
Go to general.
And our fees are less than we anticipated, or no?
No, I'm building
Yeah, which are-
permits. they were-
Remember, we were projecting they're higher.
Yes.
Okay.
And how much are there? I'm trying to remember.
What was in our model last year?
I've got the revenue report right here. Building permits 52,171 this year, right? Total year. Oh, that's 14 year to date. I read the wrong page.
Last year.
It should be all fines and permits,
This
is
is
it?
all to date. What?
It's only today, right?
Right.
So it doesn't tell us full year.
I don't have a full year on this report.
But last year was 92,000, the year before was 1.
Oh, we've got it in here. I see what
Yeah,
you're
it's on
saying.
the page, front
Okay.
page.
So let's-
The budget itself.
Yeah.
Okay, right. But just on building permits itself, last year was 74,887, right? On building permits.
Yes, and you're reporting 52 so
Right.
far, so we're ahead of
We're
last year.
ahead of the game.
Right, I mean, I was just looking to see how that balanced out with Walter's salary and expenses, and it looks like we did pretty well there. We've got that covered.
One way to look at it.
Yeah, we don't have, a lot of extra administrative time, but I also think he's pretty self-sufficient, right? He's not taking a lot of administrative time. I
So the
think.
fees are covering
Well,
that.
And I'm kind of asking that question, but I mean,
I'm sorry.
I think we want to cover Walter's, we want to try to cover Walter's salary and whatever administrative overhead he has with the fee amounts. So if there's a way to raise the fee amounts to get to that point, if we need to raise them, we should do that. And here, if we're just talking about his salaries and expenses, his 13 actual was exceeded by the 13 revenue on building permit fees, and that seems to have been true going back for a number of years, so that's pretty good.
But that's not fully loaded.
It's not fully loaded, and that's what I'm asking, Paul,
So
is,
you may want to
is-
throw in the health insurance and pensions and everything else.
yeah, so if that's the case, maybe we should be talking about goosing up the building permit fees a little bit, cover
Yeah,
those expenses.
I think as soon as we get done the budgets over the next month, then we can look at the whole permit structure, which I had on my desk for a while.
Yeah, but if we look at it sooner than that and increase the revenue to the building department, we then increase the revenue side of our budget.
Not really, I mean, right, for the total townwide model.
Yeah.
But it's really not gonna affect the individual budget.
Understood.
I mean, it's just it's an offset.
It's gonna increase this revenue number.
Right. So it'd make,
So we would go into town meeting with the revenue projection that's a little bit higher.
right,
So we should probably try to do that. I don't think can't be that hard on the building permit stuff.
no,
Okay.
it's not.
Yeah.
Would we do that with a public hearing as well, and would we try to link it with whatever we do with?
So let's try to do that well enough ahead of when the budget's
Yes,
finalized.
you're gonna change the building permit fees, you should have, again, a
Okay, but we should do it well enough ahead of when the budget's finalized, that we have a better projection of revenue from it, and that helps with the cushion.
You guys all right? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Now what's next? Veterans, we did that, so
Yeah.
the best for last of the budgets. And Ruth, I'm sure you found this one of the best nights on the town that you've had in a long time. You wanna,
Town accountant budget, ta-da, drum roll.
I should get a prize for this budget.
yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
Town accountant's
Yay,
budget,
thanks.
Well, but you're just setting yourself up for the next time there's a GASB 45 need.
But that's
You're gonna
only
have to
2 more years.
justify that, but that's what saved you.
well, half of the $18,000 drop was that, and then the other half was straightening out that issue where Pete, the treasurer was funding part of her set.
Right.
And she was funding part of the treasurer's admin system. So I wanted to get those separated so that they're.
So the treasurer's department pays the treasurer stuff, and selectmen's budget covers the accounts.
So that's what some of the other savings is.
Well, that helps you too with your 1.5%.
Sure does.
So
Hey.
this looks good.
This looks good. Hey, Ruth, though, when I was reading this stuff, where was it? Oh, when I read the purpose, description of functional activity, it was the very first word triggered a question.
Oh, oh.
How are we doing on our internal audits? Ah,
I haven't done
how
it,
are we, where are we?
not recently.
Okay, we need to take we keep
But
saying we're
now that,
moving forward.
now that the budgets are actually, I mean, we do all of these budgets, you realize that, in my office.
Yeah, that's
So
part
now
of
that
the
these are
job.
done, we can head on to the other parts of our missions.
Okay, well, I guess the starting point that I'd love to see is where do we think we want to do some internal auditing?
Every,
And so, no,
okay,
but
you tell
I
me
mean,
what.
no, I don't have it. So I'm asking you guys to, prioritize where you might want to do a little internal auditing and how you might go about it. I'd love to be able to chat about that.
Okay,
Okay, that's all. So, thanks for prompting that question. Really wonderful job on your budget. All right. So where do we go from here, David? Do we want to try to take action on some of the stuff you're talking about?
Basically, I would like to, none of this stuff is reported in the townwide model.
Yes.
So the documents I gave you based on the percentages and the amounts of all the Board of Selectmen budgets are not figured into her model.
Right.
So next, is it next Wednesday night, February 5th? We're supposed to go over these budgets with
Advisor. So you want to see, like, you'll bring this with you, and you want to see what you can not have to give up, or support the budget.
Well, don't we support what he's done here?
What I think what he's saying is he wants to incorporate his into the budget model that goes to.
Right, but I don't want to update all the sheets and give them to Ruth and she updates and incorporates it unless I know what outstanding issues there are.
Well, the only big issue, I think, is the cruiser thing.
Cruiser, right?
That's a $40,000 tactic to solve the meeting,
Right, and I think
the
we talked,
guidelines of advice.
that we believe it's important to get that back in the base
Yes.
because that's something that's was decided at one time to be funded out of the budget and was removed.
Yeah.
So it needs to get back in there, but it shouldn't go back in there at the expense of all the other Board of Selectmen budgets.
Right. So there's that, but there's also there's a couple of other changes or outliers is what I call them. Like you have got that $3,500 for the reverse 911.
The Connect CTY.
Connect
The
CTY.
Board of Health budget was reduced by the $3,500, so we've picked that up
So we're penalized by picking that up in the guidelines unless we can,
Well, the way I presented it, that it would go to advisory, it's broken out as
yes,
an adjustment to the budget, but not counting
right,
expenses.
okay,
But I've also broken out the non-general fund budgets, like elder housing and farm pond. So those aren't figured into our 1.4%.
Right. But I still had some questions from last week on the police and the CM&D. We want to figure out the problem with CM&D. So those things still remain. So until, some of those questions get further answered, if you will.
Right.
I mean, I support what he's doing here, but part of the story to be told to advisory and to the taxpayers needs a little bit more clarity of some of these things.
Well, that's the CM&D issue. I think we all are trying to look at.
Yes.
And then the police issue, I've already talked to advisory, and I think that we have.
So one of the things I said, the questions I had that sent a follow-up email was on that.
Great.
They have a 3.6% increase in the salary. We talked about that.
Right.
When we know that there's a 1% in the deal,
Right.
and whatever we did in the deal reflected was absorbed, just geography within the deal. So I don't understand why.
I think we need to do a
increase.
like a crosswalk between where we were when we negotiated the contract and now.
So that would be helpful. Yeah. The raw material issue on the budget was a critical thing, I think, to be sure we're comfortable with, because I'm with Mike. He raised the issue. I don't believe in robbing the regular CM&D materials budget to pay the snow and ice. I'd rather see us do snow and ice in the supplementals and just keep it whole.
We were all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
I think advisory was last year.
Yeah. The other, I'm just writing on the notes I had, the police, we wanted to understand the pitmen as part of the overtime explanation for the police. We wanted to look at how taking out the outliers, how the pitmen in calendar 13 overtime compared to calendar 12 overtime, not under the pitmen's
Do we have to
to
control
see a
for
savings.
increase though too? because
Yeah,
we
so
got some
we do the
increase.
outliers and all that, so we can
Yeah.
peel those back into the core sort of overtime run rate,
Right.
pre-Pittman, to help us guide us of comfort of the overtime of the break, see what I'm saying? And then there was the other question, so I'm just going through my little notes.
Yeah.
The double counting possibility of elderly housing for things like CM&D and insurance, we just gotta
Right.
confirm that, because that will help us in our, peel away that delta that we're trying to make over there. Okay, so it's those sorts of things. So I think, to the extent you can make any headway on that before you get with advisory, that will be great.
Right.
And then you come to us after having been with advisory, and I can go with you to advisory if you want me to, we can talk about that. Then we come back next week, and next week we'll vote on what we're doing. Does that sound like a plan?
We took the fire truck too.
And we can talk about that.
So he's giving us up with the fire truck too with the advisory?
Actually, the fire had to get bumped to the following week,
Okay.
but they will be there to
We
talk
don't have to
about
do
it.
it.
Right.
But I was hoping that we would be able to. Have some
I'm
sort of-
enjoying making you talk to see you suffer from a lot. I'm sorry to have you.
some sort of consensus that we can work out what we're going to take to advisory,
Yeah.
rather than go to them and I'd like to say that these are the only issues that we have left to resolve, basically.
Well, I think these are they, unless I
Right.
can't think of
I agree
anything
with the
else.
ones Peter just talked about.
So all the other ones, the smaller ones, I should go ahead and update the budget sheets forward and
Yeah, yeah,
Don't forget that
Yeah.
deductible one, 200.
yeah, 250, just call it Mike's, make sure it's noted there. All right, that's good. All right, that's a lot of work to get through, but it's gotta be done, right? And it's worthwhile. All right, so what do we have here? We put on a notice of intent to sell, and it's a discussion about 247 Washington Street. We've been provided a notice of intent by the homeowner or the property owner whatever the property owner is, and,
So he was in a state, I think.
yeah. Yeah, and we have 100 days, 120 days right of refusal to decide if we want to do anything or not.
Yeah, I still am having trouble with the maps. If these new
Here we are, we
maps.
just got the map, so now we're seeing where it's at.
This makes it much better. So these are two house lots, basically.
So that's close to Holliston.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Across from Noah. Yeah, you can't keep it because it's my only one, but it's right across from Noah. Yeah.
All right, hold on.
Let's see.
Okay,
Elliot, I have no.
Oh, he's got an extra.
so it's these two parcels, 4.2 acres and 13.4 acres. All right,
Take that.
and those are in 61A right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is, beyond my pilot house here, this is your guys' area of expertise.
Was anybody here to represent the property owner? Peter, are you here for that reason, or are you just observing?
I'm the property owner's agent.
Okay. I mean, can you tell us anything about what they're planning to do out there?
The attorney sends you the papers, goes through the process, and I'm really here just to listen to your discussion.
And you represent the seller in any case? You're repping the seller?
Yeah, I represent the seller.
Yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily know what the buyer's plans are?
That's true. I would.
Can I suggest just as a process
Yeah.
for deciding what to do with this, that we circulate this to the Conservation Commission, to the Planning Board, to the Town Forest Committee, and so on, just to see if anybody in town is interested. If they feel this is a necessary trail connection we need to add it on, let's hear it. But I don't see anything in here that says, no interest, no interest, no interest. At least get some sign-offs from.
Looks like it was sent to planning board in Concom, Paul. The notice was, but not necessarily anything else.
But we didn't get any response.
Well, this just came out yesterday, or when did we get this? That's not very long ago. They may not.
Monday, we got it Monday.
Yeah, they may not have met yet or anything.
So
Well, I think that's a great point, see whether there's interest in these various groups.
there's also a land acquisition committee that the town had, that I think is still on the books. I just circulate it around and see if anybody has any comments. And if nobody has any comments on it, then why should we not allow the property owner to go forward?
Well, here's another thought. I'd like to know what's planned for that property. The buyer presumably has some idea of what they want to do. I'd like to hear what they want to do before I decide if I want to support the town giving up their rights, because we don't know what that plan is. And I think it's a simple matter for them to tell us what the plan is.
So why don't we deputize the
town administrator? We got 120 days to sign this, so I guess they're looking for quicker action. For me, I want to know what I'm acting on.
Yeah, well, I certainly want to be timely, I don't want to get in the way of something.
You want to know
If
what the plans are. I don't want to get in the way of anything either, as long as I know what it is and I'm
there's-
comfortable that it's not bad for the town.
I fully respect you on that.
Do we know what this big heavy black line is across here?
That was the earthquake, remember the great Sherborn earthquake? I said before.
It's Sherborn Andreas fault, is that what you're saying?
What do you got?
I might be.
Do you know?
It's in the big line.
I think that might be just a line on the map.
Printer, paper.
Where somebody left the line on the map.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
That's recycling paper that had a line on it.
The original plan.
Peter, I'm with you. They drew in magic marker on the
It's
top.
not the gas line.
No, it looks like something that came off of a copier.
That's right, it's recycling paper.
It's not part of the original plan.
Approval
This
here in
land goes
Sherborn.
back. And Peter, do you know, is this land that's fully developable? Is it wet in the back? What's the?
No, those are two house lots that have been perked, deep hole tested, certified for septic systems. Passed by the ZBA, the planning board. Granted the back lot permit and the frontage lot and so forth. This was a family estate there was a ranch house that was cut out of 2.1 acres and sold. There's another portion that you don't see on there that was transferred to the Homs who live next door and are one of the family members. And these are the remaining lots that are being sold just to basically sell the estate. So they look to maximize the value of the property and made 2 house lots out of it and look to sell them. They've been for sale over a year. The 2 lots together are offered at $850,000, and my understanding is, the town has the right to buy it for that price if the town wishes to.
Do we have the contracts here?
Yeah,
They've
there's
been searched and sale.
Yeah, and Peter, again, I respect if you can't, feel like you can't answer, but then I'm gonna try to find it out from the buyer. It looks here like it's a subdividable property. In other words, they've got enough frontage to put a little cul-de-sac road in like Knollcrest Farms. Do they have any plans to build multiple lots?
When we decided to carve up the land, we looked at maximizing the value of the land and based, because of wetlands, because of setbacks, and because of the cost of building the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
The highest and best use was the selling the ranch house and having 2 more lots.
And so even though that's a total of 17 acres, enough of that's undevelopable that I couldn't make more than just these 2 lots?
The 4-acre lot has 2 acres dry.
Yeah.
This is all the MLS lives.
Right, sure.
And the other lot has 8 acres dry.
Okay.
The rest is soaking wet. It's wetlands to go off to a house to.
Right. Okay. All right, good, that's fine.
And I know that the assessors have already looked at, what the back taxes that would be due on this and so forth, and have given the family an estimate of that cost to take it out of the 61 forestry.
Okay. Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is. I know that it is a 61 forestry plan. I know that the 61 forestry plan ended when they transferred what essentially was lot 4 to the Hound family.
Yeah.
So as of January 1st this year, it's being assessed at full value.
Is Trask the one who developed across the street too, or
No, that was Clemens.
Where has Trask? There's somebody building a house over there now, though.
Yeah, St. Clemens and his partner built the Knollcrest cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And they did the first 2 houses. They put the other 2 lots for sale, and some guy came along and bought one.
But it's not the same guy who's buying here?
No.
Okay, because I know they've done something in town, I just can't remember what.
Well, they're building one of the houses on one of the frontage lots there.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah,
I've
the
seen
3rd
the
house is getting built on Knollcrest right now.
Yeah.
Right, so if the town exercised the right of first refusal, we'd still buy it, we would be buying the property, so it'd be sold no matter what.
Right.
But, so the property owner is not harmed here. I'm just suggesting that we take a little bit of time to circulate it amongst the town boards and
Departments, yeah, we can do that.
see if
Well,
anybody.
that's our responsibility under that statute. I mean, that's why they give us the right. It's not just so the owner can pay lower taxes for 10 years and then sell the property right away. The price of being able to pay the lower taxes and having it in that tax status is the town gets a right of first refusal for 120 days, which means we get to really understand the property, ask the other committees, as Paul talked about, and decide whether it's a good investment for the town, or something that's better off being developed by the buyer.
No.
I will tell you, you did go through this process when the 2.1 acres for the ranch house was carved off.
Okay.
That was offered to the town and so forth. You went through the process, and
Yep.
clearly there's no value to the town of a ranch house on 2 acres sitting on Route 16.
Yes, I voted to waive that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay.
The rollback on the taxes is 36,000.
36.
Put that in the budget also.
So revenue projection. There you go. Huh? There we balanced the budget.
Isn't that incredible?
It's 25,000.
You won't get it until it changes hands.
Well, that's another incentive.
That should be in the selectmen's budget, right? Should we count that in? All right. Okay. Thanks,
Hey, thanks.
Peter, for the input.
I'm sorry I can't be more help, but
That was very helpful. That was fine. That was good.
Go talk to Travis.
That was 100% more information than I had before you started talking, so that's
Well, I
perfect.
thought it
Thank
was
you.
important on my client's behalf to be here, but I
That's
can't really tell you information that is not to my.
But you can, so tell them the train left the station and, it's chugging along the tracks and we'll get there eventually.
You can report to your client that we're going to circulate it amongst the boards and committees.
They expected it.
And in the past, we waited for the other piece. We have no reason to expect that anybody will be jumping at the bit here. But we're going to follow the procedure, and
Does
probably
anybody
a month from now or so, we'll have it before the board and we'll make a decision.
Insofar as you do have the, insofar as you do have the PNS, you have a PNS contract there,
Yeah.
I just draw your attention, I know you have 120 days. The buyer has basically a 90-day stipulation from the date of the PNS, which was January 15th, to either, withdraw or not based on the town's actions. So while you have 120 days, for whatever reason, the 90 days is that contract, and I just ask you to be cognizant of that. We can probably always get an extension, but that's, you know how messy that can be.
Yeah, let's try and, let's try to accommodate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump family has been a long time in town, they're sorry to break up the family estate, but
It's life.
that's the way it goes.
Yeah, no problem. So
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Thanks, Peter.
help the property owner.
Okay.
Is that the area that they were talking about this?
It's not well worth.
It's further back. It's back behind Jackson or?
He said that.
No. There was one area
Alright,
down there
Diane.
in the house and border which was
Quickly,
identified.
can you give us an update of the plan for next meeting? Do we have any
Yes.
key items?
Pine Hill School's coming.
Oh, that's right.
Frank's coming and they're gonna come and talk about the.
Hey, Dave, can you send that to the water committee on water commission also?
And maybe John Higley's gonna be coming
Okay.
with the energy committee.
Oh, yeah.
I wanna talk to him.
Okay, so we have Pine Hill School to talk about their capital items. Are they coming to talk about their budget?
They'll discuss both of them.
Okay. And we have the region coming as well, right? To talk about their capital items. I'm not sure if they're coming to talk about their budget. But if they are, we welcome them. And then you're saying energy committee.
Well, I don't know. I
Is a
talked to John
possibility.
Higley, we
Yeah.
would touch base on Monday.
Okay. Do we
Well,
have
he said he
any?
had something to reveal to us.
Right.
Yeah,
Made me all excited. He better come back and tell us what it is.
I hope he gets here.
Well, the solar project is taken off and solarized Sherborn and up to tier
Something around.
5 or something like that. So-
Yeah.
And a lot of people have signed up, so we're actually accomplishing a big impact.
Yeah.
It's like 50.
Is it too late to get in on that action there, Paul, or no? They still doing that or no?
You can call him and have him come out to you.
Yeah,
I had him come around.
It looked like a good thing. I just, spaced out on doing it at the end of last year, but it would be good to do.
The more people go to solar power, the better environmentally
Yeah, sure.
it is for the environment, the less foreign fossil fuel we're using, the more the nation as a whole becomes energy independent.
We'll be stopping wars.
We stop
Well,
wars.
I do energy efficient products, that's my business, so I always wind up to that point.
You know what
I said,
countries-
I'm helping to stop wars.
You know what countries put up more solar panels than any other country?
India, I don't know. China,
They make most of them.
yeah,
They're what?
They make
they make them.
Yeah. They put them up.
They make 'em. There you go. They don't pollute more, but that's another story. All right, that's good. So then we have selectmen minutes of October 10th, November 8th,
Comment on something.
November 14th, and November 23rd, so.
So we on October 10th first?
Well, we'll take them all as a whole, so if you want to comment.
I do have a comment on the second, well, one comment, you can use the page numbers on this. The second comment would be on page.
Which date?
On
October
number
10th?
page 2 of October 10th.
Okay.
Consideration of consent agenda, the last line before you get to the motion.
Okay.
It says, I suggested annual bidding of contracts for, I would say, town services, potential cost savings going forward, because it looks like I suggested bidding out the police contract, the way it's written out, and I did not suggest that.
So I move approval with the amendment proposed by
I second that. All in favor? Great, all right. How about November 8th? Any changes?
Move approval.
Second, all in favor? The 14th? Second?
One thing on both this one and the next one, just remove the items maybe taken out of order from the top of it. I think you cut and pasted on the
Okay.
agenda.
Yep.
I meant to I meant to tell you
Okay.
that I forgot to do that.
Oh, that's on the 10th one also, Diane.
Okay.
Yeah, all the
That should never be on the, that should be on
That's
the
just typo.
agenda, but not on the minutes.
Yeah, no, that's just the type.
Good catch.
Okay.
It's typo.
All right,
All right, otherwise,
on 14th, move to approve.
second, all in favor?
On the 21st, move to approve.
Second, all in favor? Great.
On
Well done, gents. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Well, I had an item on the slope.
Oh,
please,
sorry, I
I'm
forget.
sorry.
Let's unadjourn. Motion not to adjourn.
Well, we'll just hold that motion. Yeah.
Just on the reports, if you would listen to the governor's State of the Union address, he made a big deal about the fact that the cities and towns were not supporting his OPEB reforms. Went in great lengths about all the things he's done for cities and towns and why shouldn't the cities and towns then back on this OPEB reform? And as a spokesman for the 351, that is the 351 cities and towns, I did want to comment that the governor's OPEB proposal, in the view of the 351 cities and towns, doesn't go far enough. And it's not that we are opposed to OPEB reform, it's that the OPEB, specific OPEB reform that the governor is pushing because he now has the support of the unions behind it, defers the benefits to the cities and towns for at least 10 years. The bulk of the reforms are much further out. And so we, the 351, think that we can do better. And so we have resisted and not supporting this particular bill, but we are interested in OPEB reform, and we are interested in continuing dialogue, and we are interested in trying to find a compromise that would provide better benefits. So to the extent that there's a suggestion out there that I and others are blocking OPEB reform, that's not the case. It's a negotiation. It's a situation that's ongoing. So all of the cities and towns are pretty much in agreement. It needs to be a better deal for the taxpayers and for the cities and towns.
That's great to hear.
That's good, that's good.
And that reminds me, just one quick question, because I meant to ask it on insurance. We need to be sure we do that analysis of comparison of the rate saver plan we have to the GIC offering, right? Because that drives OPEBs in a big way. So I know I keep asking, I just want to remind, I know that
No,
I
I,
work with the treasurer, you're looking into
I have it
so-
now, we should look at it.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we can throw that on the next agenda. That's great. When you're ready to deal with that, we'll deal with that. How's that?
No, I'm going to when you're, I was born ready.
Wow.
Well, there you go. That's a great one. Now remember that, yeah, we have a motion, a second, all in favor? Well, you're getting good. Born ready. That's gonna come back and haunt you. Born ready. Ready to roll. Another fun night at town hall.
There's a version